Good morning. Shabbat Shalom. May the peace of the Sabbath be with you today. Average girl, thanks for coming in early this morning. Oh, I'm up and moving now. Uh-oh, I've got an echo. There we go. I actually remembered to turn on my own stream this morning first. I just forgot to mute me or pause me, so I'm not watching myself talk. uh, well, I'm setting up for the show here. This is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I am a show that, I'm starting to use the term show because that's what it's becoming like in some sense. So I try to aim for a time and that kind of stuff. This is actually just a period of time where I sit and read different texts. Quick catch up for those that are new. I, throughout the years during this period of time on Saturday, would read scriptures and histories to my children. And now that my older ones are off doing their own thing and my younger one's off on a different venture at this time, I've taken to reading these texts with other people, that being y'all, and I appreciate everyone that comes in and joins us. I also put these to where my younger daughter can sit and listen to her dad as well. And as some saw last week, my older son was in town and he also catches me on occasion. And I had a real good visit with him this week. He helped me do a few chores around here, but I did a little too much. So I'm in a little bit of a achy pain this morning, but we're making it. Jetta Joe, thank you for coming in. Good morning. Blessings to you. I am a medical patient in the state of Florida for medical cannabis. I have degenerative bone disease as well as Crohn's disease. I have been smoking lightly this morning because I've been trying to just maintain, but I am going to get a little bit ready here while I'm talking if I can get my thing open, which is not happening. I think I'll have one more smoke this morning while I'm setting up too. I don't know if anybody got to watch the little walkabouts I've done lately, but it's been nice out, so I have done a few afternoons. I've been looking into the origin of the saying where we use cheers whenever we smoke. Found several interesting and different traditions that it comes from and behind. Robert Burt, good morning this morning. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming in and listening. I'm getting ready to read. We have the end of the book of Enoch, chapters 61 to 101. Having a little bit of a smoke here. Some forbidden fruit. Same thing I smoked on last week. Most incredibly terpene flavor for somebody who medicinally uses it for pain. I do find that it's not as strong as some of the OGs that work for me and stuff like that, but it is a relaxing one, so it takes care of pain in that way. Continuing on with an earlier conversation I had this morning with a friend with the Crohn's disease, this one actually has helped me with the nausea all morning this morning, which it didn't the other day, so that's a surprising change. I'm dealing with quite a few things in my everyday life, a divorce being one of them, and with a son being in town and my younger daughter, which is with my wife's birthday, there's been a lot of stress and stuff that's gone along with that. So stress, of course, negatively affects our body, and does help. Good morning, Stephanie. Thanks for coming by. Getting set up here, getting ready to read. But if for those that come in later that watch this, I know some people will see it and see that I smoke marijuana and will automatically just turn it off. But there's others who may stop to listen to the rest of it, and I want you to understand that I understand that pot is not for everybody, but medicinally, it does work on systems that have been poisoned, and we live in a poisoned world right now. And I have worked in very many very poisonous environments, including those that produce the paint we put on our walls, places like where they produce the insides of batteries, the chemicals for the insides of the batteries. I've worked at our power plants, which are, if anybody saw what it really took to make power, they would be absolutely aghast, which is why they do not allow very many documentaries on it. Um, if you want to know just how bad it is, look up cancer rates in places like coal plants and stuff like that. And that'll give you a good idea of what they're putting into the air and into the ground all around you. Um, but due to those many physical stresses, I was sick by the age of 26 years old with ulcerative colitis. There's been many different debates as to what caused that. I was sick as a young child, took a lot of antibiotics, and so oftentimes that was, or at first that was the ruling they gave me, that it was all the stuff I took as a child. But as I continued to get sick and as different things changed, I began to look at the environment I was working in and all that kind of stuff, and began to see that all of it was affecting me. And of course, as a young man with a family, you have responsibilities. I'm a trained electrician, so I continued working in my field as long as I possibly could, and have all kinds of fun issues from it. Um, the cannabis, for the longest time, has helped me maintain. Um, I am looking into the new research into healing doses and stuff like that, and look forward to sharing with y'all as that progresses and I'm able to uh, hopefully get well as people watch. 6 months ago, I was at the point that I was only able to work 1 day a week, and I was bedbound at least 3 days a week. So I've come a long way, and hope that as I progress with new treatments and stuff, we can watch it together. My granddaughter has had to take antibiotics since an infant. It does create other issues. Yes, it does, and that's, I'm sorry to hear that for your granddaughter, because that's pretty much how I was. I had pyloric stenosis at 6 days old and died my first time. Um, that's where the stomach muscle doesn't let any food go into your stomach, and they cut it open, and uh, it heals back so that it allows food to travel by it. And because of that, of course, they started me as a baby on antibiotics, and I was just always sick, just everything, just throughout my childhood. You name a disease, even the ones I was immunized for, I caught. So I was some of the last of the kids that actually had the mumps, rubella, and all that kind of stuff physically. Scarecrow buddy, good to see you. I'm winding up here, getting ready for the show. Thanks for coming by. You've been kind of in hide a little bit. I saw that you were getting your business set up and going. I'm proud of you, buddy. That's good to go. Glad to see that you're getting things progressing there. I do keep an eye in. Um, don't always talk as much in chats live because of sometimes I'm just laid out and don't want to chat. Sorry. She has a kidney issue. We go every 6 months to the hospital, 3 hours away. This April, we will find out if she needs surgery. Well, Jenna, will keep her in our prayers. We do believe in the Creator and the creative energies that He has flowing through this universe. And in prayer, we put forward to Him to allow to find healing. We pray healing for the young lady, that she won't have to have kidney surgery, but instead her body will find a way to heal itself. I'm not the kind of guy that does the big formal bow your head, all that kind of stuff. I don't believe it's necessary. It says he hears our heart. All we have to do is express it. It even says that if we bug him about stuff, sometimes he'll give it to us just to show us that it's not exactly what we need. So I try not to bug him. He is the creator. All he has to do is hear me, then that's it. So that's where I put my faith at. Alrighty. Finishing my bad habit there. I did good this week. This pack has not, but every other pack was 2.5 days. So I have managed to stretch it out a good distance. Wheaton, thanks for coming in. If I remember right, the antibiotics they had you on were later recalled for causing some of the symptoms you experienced. Yes, you do remember some of my other stories from other broadcasts, I see. And yes, I, dude, for all those different years, all those different sicknesses, and all the different remedies and all they gave me, that was one of the reasons. It was one of the first things they put their finger on when they thought that's why I was having all the stomach illnesses. Um, I do know that not taking antibiotics now for many, many years, except I've had to have them intravenously done a few times when with diabetes and stuff, I've caught an infection. But as far as for general illness, I haven't taken them. I've managed to only catch the flu like once every 3 or 4 years and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I just got to stay away. Don't need any extra illnesses all the time. Your average girl, I'll have to think about that because, geez, uh, when I'm telling stories and I'm in a moment and I can see the picture of all the things that were happening, a lot of times I remember details. Um, but I will think about it and see if I can remember and let you know. Um, Going into Enoch, last week was a pretty tedious week to read through. It goes through the, uh, yeah, Keflex was one of them. Um, uh, Anyways, I'm going to start in for this week's thing. Last week we looked at the astrology and astronomy that was laid out to Enoch and how the forces of the planets affect energies, and those energies also affect um, the forces and the powers and things on the earth, and that they were set there for signs and to be put into place to give us a calendar and a clock and to keep the different appointed seasons falling into the right place on the calendar and stuff. Um, Many people have studied this system recently to great extent and find that if we'd never gone off of this, we'd be much closer to a true date in our timing of where we're at. Well, we're coming into 61, and I'm going to start in reading. Thus the Lord commanded the kings, the princes, the exalted, and those who dwell on earth, saying, open your eyes and lift up your horns, if you are capable of comprehending the elect one. And I'm going to stop real quick there and make mention of the lift up your horns. We find that over and over, given many different descriptions, but we do know it has to do with our authority, our power, in a spiritual sense. Um, Physically, there was evidently horns in one point in time related to that. The Lord of Spirits sat upon the throne of his glory, and the Spirit of righteousness was poured out over him. So one of the spirits, specifically the one of righteousness, comes into the Christ at this point. The word of his mouth shall destroy all the sinners and all the ungodly who dwell and perish at his presence. In that day shall all the kings, the princes, the exalted, and those who possess the earth stand up, behold, and perceive that he is sitting on the throne of his glory, that before him the saints shall be judged in his righteousness. And knowing that I was reading this verse, I know several of y'all understand that I've been looking back into the Vedas, getting ready for reading those and the Vedas creations and stuff like that. And I wanted to put a quick point. A lot of times people get into this thing about, oh, a righteous God destroying everybody, but I want us to think back even further in history to those further ancient texts which say uh, that um, there is a triune Christ that was upon the earth at that time, and the third part of that one was, um, yeah, Brahma, Shiva, and dang, I go to say the name and it runs away. That's the way things happen. Um, anyways, Kali, um, who is the destroyer. But if you, and when we read the Vedas, you'll see that he actually destroys the unrighteous. He destroys that which is evil, that which destroys. He destroys death. So there's already this concept within the spiritual cosmology of something coming back to correct all the things that have gone unrighteous, and it being a part of the spirit of the Christ. So I just wanted to put that in to show that there are correlations. And that nothing which shall be spoken before him shall be spoken in vain. Trouble shall come upon them, and as upon a woman in travail, whose labor is severe when her child comes to the mouth of the wound, and she finds it difficult to bring forth. So this isn't just talking about a woman being in travail, about having a child. This is talking about a period of time that's going to be like a woman who's having a hard time giving birth, which means, and my first wife was, or my, I'll get this out right. My wife at our first birth of our son was in labor for 17 hours. And those last several hours, he would come and go back. So this is a very clear picture of something that's travailing. One portion of them shall look upon another. They shall be astonished and shall humble their countenance. And trouble shall seize them when they shall behold the Son of Woman sitting upon the throne of his glory. Then shall the kings, the princes, and all who possess the earth glorify him who has dominion over all things, him who was concealed. For from the beginning the Son of Man existed in secret, whom the Most High preserved in the presence of his power and revealed to the elect. He shall sow the congregation of the saints and of the elect, and all the elect shall stand before him in that day. So this is indicating that upon his return there is some type of resurrection, because it says all the elect will be there before him. All the kings and princes, the exalted, and all those who rule the earth shall fall down on their faces before him and shall worship him. They shall fix their hopes on the Son of Man, shall pray to him and petition him for mercy. Then shall the Lord of spirits hasten to expel them from his presence. Their faces shall be full of confusion, and their faces shall darkness cover. The angels shall take them to punishment, that vengeance may be inflicted on those who have oppressed his children and his elect. And they shall become an example to the saints and to his elect. Through them shall these be made joyful, for the anger of the Lord of spirits shall rest upon them. Then the sword of the Lord of the Spirit shall be drunk with their blood. But the saints and the elect shall be safe in that day. Nor the face of the sinners and the ungodly shall they thenceforth behold. The Lord of spirits shall remain over them. And with the Son of Man shall they dwell, eat, lie down, and rise up forever and ever. The saints and the elect have arisen from the earth, have left off to depress their countenance, and have been clothed with the garment of life. That garment of life is with the Lord of spirits, in whose presence your garment shall not wax old, nor shall your glory diminish. I recently had a pretty good long conversation with somebody about that particular set of verses without knowing that's what I was talking about. In those days, the kings who possess the earth shall be punished by the angels of his wrath, wheresoever they shall be delivered up, that he may give rest for a short period, and that they may fall down and worship before the Lord of spirits, confessing their sins before him. They shall bless and glorify the Lord of spirits, saying, Blessed is the Lord of spirits, the Lord of kings, the Lord of princes, the Lord of the rich, the Lord of glory, and the Lord of wisdom. He shall enlighten every secret thing. Your power is from generation to generation, and your glory forever and ever. Deep are all your secrets and numberless, and your righteousness cannot be calculated. Now we know that we should glorify and bless the Lord of Kings, him who is King over all things. They shall also say, who has granted us rest to glorify, laud, bless, and confess in the presence of his glory? And now small is the rest we desire, but we do not find it. We reject it and do not possess it. Light has passed away from before us, and darkness has covered over our thrones forever. For we have not confessed before him, we have not glorified the name of the Lord of Kings. We have not glorified the Lord in all his works, but we have trusted in the scepter of our dominion and of our glory. In the day of our suffering and of our trouble, he will not save us, neither shall we find rest. We confess that our Lord is faithful in all of his works, in all his judgments, and in all of his righteousness. In his judgment, he pays no respect to persons, and we must depart from his presence on account of our evil deeds. All our sins are truly without number. Then shall they say to themselves, our souls are satiated with the instruments of crime, but that prevents us from descending to the flaming womb of hell. Afterwards their countenance shall be filled with darkness and confusion before the Son of Man, from whom presence they shall be expelled, and before whom the sword shall remain to expel them. Thus said the Lord of Spirits, this is a decree and a judgment against the princes, the kings, and exalted, and those who possess the earth in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. So all the unrighteous rulers see what their judgment is going to be. They claim that it is righteous judgment and then are sent off to fulfill it. I saw also other countenances in that secret place. I heard the voice of an angel saying, there are angels who have descended from heaven to earth and have revealed secrets to the sons of men and have seduced the sons of men to the commission of sin. Okay, and this is going to take us back to Noah again. In those days, Noah saw that the earth was inclined and that destruction approached. And I'm going to stop here real quick because we're noticing the incline of the earth changing again. Something that you have a chance to look into. It's real interesting to see how it changes the precession of the stars and how that changes the energies and all that kind of stuff. Then he lifted up his feet and went to the ends of the earth, to the dwelling of his great grandfather Enoch. And Noah cried with a bitter voice, hear me, hear me, hear me, 3 times. And he said, tell me, what is transacting upon the earth? For the earth labors and is violently shaken. Surely I shall perish with it. After this there was a great perturbation upon the earth, and a voice was heard from heaven. I fell down on my face, when my great grandfather Enoch came and stood by me. He said to me, why have you cried out to me with a bitter cry and lamentation? A commandment has gone forth from the Lord against those who dwell on the earth, that they may be destroyed. For they know every secret of the angels, every oppressive and secret power of the devils, and every power of those who commit sorcery, as well as those who make molten images in the whole earth. And I'm going to stop right now real quick again and make a comment on the molten images because it's very interesting that these words don't actually translate to what we use as the word idol as in one that's bowed down to. However, it came to mean that. It's interesting that if you go back and read several of the old texts, you will find reference to mechanical men. And I believe this might be the previous attempt at that cycle of AI. So that's kind of just my take on it. I thought I'd throw that in for you. It's interesting how we have in the Revelation that there's going to be an image made that's able to speak. It is then going to be indwelt by a spirit and have a consciousness. And I believe they've been trying to do this for a long time. They know how silver is produced from the dust of the earth, and how the earth, the metallic drop, exists. For lead and tin are not produced from the earth as the primary fountain of their production. There is an angel standing upon it, and that angel struggles to prevail. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I do know that there's places on the earth that are actually sealed up by angels. Afterward, my great grandfather Enoch seized me with his hand, raising me up, and saying to me, "Go, for I have asked the Lord of spirits respecting this perturbation of the earth," who replied, "On account of their impiety, have their innumerable judgments been consummated before me. Respecting the moons have they inquired, and they have known that the earth will perish with those who dwell upon it, and that to those there will be no place of refuge forever." A little subnote says, respecting the moons that dwell upon it, it says, "Because of their sorceries which they have searched out and learned, the earth and those dwell upon it will be destroyed." And I believe that is quite possibly a reference to understanding that calendar we had given before. "They have discovered secrets, and they are those who have been judged. But not you, my son. The Lord of spirits knows that you are pure and good, free from the reproach of discovering secrets. He, the Holy One, will establish your name in the midst of the saints, and will preserve you from those who dwell upon the earth. He will establish your seed in righteousness with domain and great glory. And from your seed shall spring forth righteousness and holy men without number forever." And when I was in the beginning of the survivalist type stuff and messianic movement, we often referred to that verse as being one that we looked toward, because it seemed like he was a farmer as opposed to a scientist in that statement. Um, After this, he showed me the angels of punishment who were prepared to come and to open the mighty waters under the earth, that they may be for judgment and for the destruction of all those who remain and dwell upon the earth. And the Lord of spirits commanded the angel who went forth not to take up men and preserve them, for those angels presiding over all the mighty waters. Then I went out from the presence of Enoch. In those days the word of the Lord came to me, saying, "Noah, behold, your lot has ascended up to me, a lot void of crime, a lot beloved and upright. Now then shall the angels labor at the trees, but when they proceed to this, I will put my hand upon it and preserve it. The seed of life shall arise from it, and a change shall take place, that the dry land shall not be left empty. I will establish your seed before me forever and ever, and the seed of those who dwell with you on the surface of the earth. It shall be blessed and multiplied in the presence of earth in the name of the Lord. And they shall confine those angels who disclose impiety. In that burning valley it is that they shall be confined, which at first my great grandfather Enoch showed me in the west, where the mountains of gold and silver, of iron, of fluid metal, and of tin. I beheld that valley in which there was great perturbation, and where the waters were troubled. And when all this was effected, from the fluid mass of fire and the perturbation which prevailed, in that place there arose a strong smell of sulfur, which became mixed with the waters. And the valley of the angels, who had been guilty of seduction, burned underneath its soil. Through that valley also rivers of fire were flowing, to which the angels shall be condemned, who seduced the inhabitants of the earth. And in those days shall these waters be to kings, to princes, to the exalted, and to the inhabitants of the earth, for the healing of the soul and body, and for the judgment of the spirit. Their spirits shall be full of revelry, that they may be judged in their bodies, because they have denied the Lord of spirits. And although they perceive their condemnation day by day, they believe not in his name. And as the inflammation of their bodies shall be great, so shall their spirits undergo a change forever. For no word which is uttered before the Lord of spirits shall be in vain. And I want to make a comment right here about the fact that these angels also are going through some kind of spiritual change because of this travail they're undergoing. Um, this really flies in the face a lot of Christian theology, I know, but I believe as Christians we've been led astray into a lot of understanding of the underworld, of hell, of judgment, and of that kind of stuff. it's kind of easier to trap you in a box if the rules are simple. So if I make a set of rules and I say, hey, you do it or die, it's pretty simple. Oh, and also the fact that these same waters which come from the place of judgment are for healing of the people. After this, he gave me the characteristical mark of all the secret things in the book of my great grandfather Enoch, and in the parable which has been given to him, inserting them for me among the words of the books of parables. Okay, it means the signs. He gave me the signs. At that time, Holy Michael answered and said to Raphael, the power of the Spirit hurries me away and impels me on. The severity of the judgment, of the secret judgment of the angels, who is capable of beholding? The endurance of that severe judgment which has taken place and has been made permanent, without being melted at the sight of it. Again, Holy Michael answered and said to Holy Raphael, who is there whose heart is not softened by it, and whose reins are not troubled at this thing? Judgment has gone forth against them by those who have thus dragged them away, and that was when they stood in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. In like manner, Holy Raquel said to Raphael, they shall not be before the eye of the Lord, since the Lord of Spirits has been offended with them. For like the Lord's have they conducted themselves. Therefore will he bring upon them a secret judgment forever and ever. For neither shall angel nor man receive a portion of it, but they alone shall receive their own judgment forever and ever. It was reading this set of verses and listening to a pastor preach that these demons right now are being ground up in hell. Well, yes, 200 of them are. But anyways, makes you begin to realize just how far off others people's understanding is, and got me into looking into more about what this stuff was talking about, because all these are clued in the Bible. And I would never even started reading any of this stuff if it wasn't clued in the Bible. After this judgment they shall be astonished and irritated, for it shall be exhibited to the inhabitants of the earth. Behold the names of those angels, these are their names. The first of them is Semyaza, the second Aristakapha, the third Amen, and I'm going to skip the numbers, Karkabel, Turel, Rumiel, Daniel, Kael, Barkel, Azazel, Aramers, Bactriel, Basael, Enanel, Turiel, Simapisil, Yetrael, Tumael, Terel, Rumel, and Azaziel. These are the chiefs of their angels, and the names of the leaders of their hundreds, and the leaders of their fifties, and the leaders of their tens. The name of the first, Yakun, he it was who seduced all the sons of the holy angels, and causing them to descend to the earth, led astray the offspring of men. The name of the second, Kesabel, who pointed out evil counsel to the sons of the holy angels, and induced them to corrupt their bodies by generating mankind. The name of the third is Gadriel. He discovered every stroke of death to the children of men. He seduced Eve and discovered to the children of men the instruments of death, the coat of mail, the shield, the sword for slaughter, every instrument of death to the children of men. From his hand were these things derived, to them who dwell upon the earth from that period forever. The name of the fourth is Pinamu. He discovered to the children of men bitterness and sweetness, and pointed out to them every secret of their wisdom. He taught men to understand writing and the use of ink and paper. Therefore numerous have been those who have gone astray from every period of the world, even to this day. For men were not born for this, thus with pen and with ink to confirm their faith, since they were not created except that, like angels, they might remain righteous and pure. Nor would death, which destroys everything, have affected them, but by this their knowledge they perished, and by this also its power consumes them. I made reference in the tablets of Enki that maybe we were actually in a higher state before the Anunnaki came, and that in our participation with them in some kind of creative process, possibly being DNA or whatever, that we traded that spiritual sense for these physical knowledges. And that is the reason why we are stuck in this physical state. Um, Hence, a continuation of the fall. Um, I find it very interesting how much power is given to the word here, um, being that man was meant to confirm our faith by what we write down. That goes into a lot of really interesting teachings. Um, the name of the fifth is Kasaid. He discovered to the children of men every wicked stroke of spirits and of demons. Okay, this is the one that taught how to use the power of the evil. The stroke of the embryo in the womb, abortion, to diminish it, the stroke of the spirit by the bite of the serpent, and the stroke which is given in the midday by the offspring of the serpent, the name which is Tabanet. And I have found in looking some of this stuff up that it refers to like a woman miscarrying or having seizures or one thing I wanted to point out though was that the stroke comes by a serpent and the offspring of a serpent. Keep that in mind as we notice the two battle of the seeds. This is the number of Kisbel, the principal part of the oath, which is the Most High dwelling in glory, revealed to the holy ones. Its name is Becca. He spoke to the holy Michael to discover them the sacred name, that they might understand that secret name, and thus remember the oath, and that those who pointed out every secret thing to the children of men might tremble at the name and oath. That is the power of that oath, for powerful it is and strong. And he established this oath of Akay by the instrumentality of holy Michael. These are the secrets of this oath, and by it were they confirmed. Heaven was suspended by it before the world was made forever. By it has the earth been founded upon the flood, while from the concealed parts of the hills the agitated waters proceeded forth from the creation to the end of the world. By this oath the sea has been formed in the foundation of it. During the period of its fury he established the sand against it, which continues unchanged forever. And by this oath the abyss has been made strong, nor is it removable from its station forever and ever. Wait till you guys hear what the Vedas say. I mean, the stories are crazy, the two pictures given. By this oath, the sun and moon complete their progress, never swerving from the command given to them forever and ever. By this oath, the stars complete their progress, and when their names are called, they return and answer forever and ever. Thus in the heavens take place the blowing of the winds. All of them have breathings, and effect a complete combination of breathings. And these make reference to spirits, and uh, I'll leave that there for now. There the treasure of thunder are kept in the splendor of the lightning. There are kept the treasures of hail and frost, and treasures of snow, and treasures of rain and of dew. And these confess and laud before the Lord of spirits. They glorify with all their power of praise, and he sustains them in all the acts of thanksgiving, while they laud and glorify and exalt the name of the Lord of spirits forever and ever. And with them he established this oath, by which they and their paths are preserved, nor does their progress perish. Great was their joy. They blessed and glorified and exalted, because the name of the Son of Man was revealed to them. He sat upon the throne of his glory. The principal part of the judgment was assigned to him, the Son of Man. Sinners shall disappear and perish from the face of the earth, while those who seduce them shall be bound with chains forever. And this was one of the key verses that helped me begin to understand that death isn't all that we understand it is, because some disappear. They are no more. And yet those who lead the sheep and draw those sheep into that darkness, they are judged for that and are actually bound for a time of judgment as well. Everything wicked shall disappear and depart before his face, and word of the Son of Man shall become powerful in the presence of the Lord of spirits. This is the third parable of Enoch. I'm going to take a real quick break here and see how things are going over here in chat. Actually, I'm going to return to our earlier conversation with Average Girl, and yes, it was one that was right before Keflex came out, and I remember the little black pill that came in. I can't remember the stupid name of it yet, and that is one of the things it did say it gave was degenerative joints, and within about about a year, maybe 2 years, um, I started having the first arthritis in my hips, and it's something that they managed to arrest, and it never really got worse, even though I do still have attacks of it on occasion. Tetracycline sounds familiar, but that might have been the name for the Keflex itself. I appreciate all you guys for smashing my like buttons. I don't get all hung up in that, but I know YouTube does, and some people look to see about it, so I do appreciate it. I don't ask for it, but grateful. Tubes, man, anytime, man. And if you and your mom want to talk about anything as far as the diet or any of the other herbal stuff, anytime you want to chat about it, man, I'm willing. Like I said, I'm going through this healing process myself. Um, you're watching it, other people are watching it, and hopefully we'll make it to health again. And Jetta Joe, that we may all be talking about the same thing, but I didn't think it was Keflex. I was thinking it was the one before that that was the one that gave me all the bad joint disease. But I'll take a little break here for a second. I've been having difficulty this morning getting my little thing open. Oh, it popped open this time. I am so thankful. Broke my thumb Monday 2 weeks ago. I finally took the thing off this week because the bone no longer clicks and grinds. I broke it right there between the two knuckles. My drill caught and the drill kept going and my thumb went sideways. And the bone's strong enough now that I thought I'd better start doing a little motion on the joints or they might lock up and then I'll just have a long. But I had broke this wrist in 96. I fell from a roof. I did a Superman straight into the ground and took this hand completely off, stuck it up behind here and shot the bones out through here. And I have only had 13% use and very little use of this thumb. I actually now have more use this way of the thumb than I've had since that period of time. But anyways, it knocked something loose at the same time I broke another bone. Yeah, Jetta, that's the way I seem to be able to do stuff. Oh, just a little bitty bit of a stir here. A little something to put in it. Yeah, there for a week, I wasn't sure if it was going to ever stay still enough to quit clicking. And every time it clicked, it hurt really good. But we're past the clicking stage now. The bone is staying static. And as long as I don't do something stupid like try to grab with it, I'm usually alright. I have found a lot of things are very awkward to do without thumbs. So I'm very glad we have thumbs. Uh, Funny little story from this week is I do live in Florida, and down here during the winter time, a lot of homeless people come, and they hit you up at the stoplights when you're waiting for it to turn, and I try to be kind, and I held my hand out and was just giving the dude a buck, and he looks at my thumb and he goes, ah, and he holds up his hand and his left thumb was completely missing. He goes, I did that once, but I was not so lucky. So I've been counting my blessings all week. Cheers. Of course, being as much pain as you experienced, Jetta, you know that when you're in pain, it's hard to be grateful for the pain sometimes. And when you got to do stuff you don't want to do while you're in pain, it's hard to be grateful for the pain sometimes. And I was grateful that the Creator gave me a reminder to quit being so grouchy that day. That's the cool thing about having faith and believing in the Creator is it says that He turns all those bad things to good for us. So even though we're going through the bad now and it's purifying and correcting our own spirit, our soul, making us a better person, at the same time, not only is it going to make us spiritually better, but He flips all that bad stuff around. He pays back those that wish evil against us. He pays all that back for us so that we don't have to stress. And because we don't have to do that paying back, it's easier to say, hey, I can forgive that. Because if we have to continually think about, hey, I've got to make this equal or whatever, then forgiveness will never enter into the equation. But only through faith can you find forgiveness and give forgiveness. Um, and that's taking the bad and turning it into good, which is a good sign of the light of the path, and that you're on the light path of light. There we go. It's actually found in several different scriptures. It says, by the very fact that we go through these trials, that the Creator bothers to try to refine us. Do we know that we're children because we have to train children, and we are children in this place and time. Um, by our faith, we know that He's a good and righteous Father, and in that aspect of it, and I know this triggers a lot of people because of all the negativity that goes on nowadays with the father or patriarch idea. Um, but I use it as a term. I'll explain it further later. But in understanding that, as a role, a provider, a caretaker, a comforter, knowing that He wishes all good thing for His children, as evil things come against us or as bad things happen, He has the power to go above and beyond that. And that's where we have faith. And through that faith, we know that we don't have to solve these issues ourselves. And therefore, we're able to find forgiveness. We're able to listen to people speak and not be judgmental of the things they say or do, which is something that I find is very hard for everybody. But if we don't think we have to be the judge of every word everybody says, then we lose that judgmentalness. And all that comes from believing and faith that there's something that's got this all in order. that under it all there's love. Love that wishes more for its creation than it does for itself. I love having deep theological conversations. Sometimes our little readings would fall into that with the kids, and wow, I just had to pause in my heart because I have one child who's not going to go through that same experience. But as I was about to say, this week, my son being here, listening to his life, listening to his decisions, hearing those things continuing on forward, knowing that it's because of showing him the hope, showing him the faith, showing him how these things happen, that he's even now able to turn around and say, Dad, listen, I know you're going through crap, but this is all going to be better when it's done. You know, the stress of the things you've been going through have made you sicker and sicker and sicker, and the only thing it can do is make you better. And so my words of teaching have now come full circle, and those same faith and healing words come back around in my time. And it's crazy that the same words he learned to live through the stresses of, or the same stresses his dad's now having to live through. Because some of the decisions I didn't make to correct while he was a child, I'm now undergoing those judgments. So I've learned some lessons myself spiritually. SOS, buddy, thanks for coming in. I flipped back over to my Enoch screen here, so I missed seeing you come up. Cheers, brother. Hope you're having a good day today. We're heading into 69 here. After this, the name of the Son of Man, living with the Lord of Spirits, was exalted by the inhabitants of the earth. It was exalted in the chariots of the Spirit, and the name went forth in the midst of them. And the chariots of the Spirit here is actually the Shem. And the Shem is actually the same reference used to sound like Ezekiel's wheels, which are the angels' chariots. From that time I was not drawn into the midst of them, but he seated me between two spirits, between the north and the west, where the angels received their ropes to measure out a place for the elect and the righteous. There I beheld the fathers of the first men, and the saints who dwell in that place forever. And notice there's also now a separation of the fathers of the first men and of saints. So, don't know what it means exactly, but I know we keep seeing these separations of beings or men that existed different than us. Afterwards, my spirit was concealed, ascending into heaven. I beheld the sons of the holy angels treading on flame of fire, whose garments and robes were white, and whose countenance were transparent as crystal. I saw two rivers of fire glittering like hyacinth. Then I fell on my face before the Lord of Spirits. And Michael, one of the archangels, took me by the right hand and raised me up and brought me out to where was every secret of mercy and secret of righteousness. He showed me all the hidden things of the extremities of heaven, all the receptacles of the stars. And did I just make a huge mistake? I think I just lapped my previous week. Yeah, because this is going into the luminaries, and that is the reason why everything was sounding familiar, because it wasn't what I was read earlier this week. It's what I read last week. No, I was not well this morning, Jetta, and I didn't fast forward my thing far enough to where I left off, and I started back over. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed it. I will skip all of the suns and the moons and all of that. Okay, I'm going to take just a minute. It's a refresher, yeah. Oh. And see, this week I was so busy with my son, I did not go back and relabel last week's. So it did not even trigger in my mind when I started this morning. And I'll be absolutely honest, does anybody who's in the chat right now remember where the end of it was? Well, and that's cool. That's cool. Evidently, I was meant to re-say it all this week because I tell you, normally I'm pretty good about finding that stuff before, just the repetitive things. Um, I'm trying to find out now where I left off last week. And since I didn't label last week's, of course, that's not as easy as said. Yeah, it's. I'm not a. I'm a person who will have two or three different studies going at one time. Because I will be reading a document and it'll trigger me remembering something that I read somewhere else and I'll want to go back. Or I'll be listening to somebody on YouTube misquoting something, which completely changes what something means. And I'll go back hunting for those particular passages um, so that I could make sure I was right in what I said. Yeah, this was a really good week with my kid. He really helped my spirits a lot. My oldest boy. He helped me get done some things that I was really afraid I wasn't going to be able to get finished. Hopefully, if everything continues to work out in their proper plan and time, soon I'll be heading out to the Midwest to help a friend move and setting up a garden, a hemp and cannabis garden. And I'm looking like we're somewhere between 82 and 84. I think we'll go to 82 after I finish this little station identification real quick. The old term for commercial break. One of the things I was listening to this week in the creation story of the Vedas during one of the interpretations and the how things were created and talking about that cosmic forces that were creating the original struggle and all that kind of stuff. Um, it talks about how at one point Vishnu had to hold up a giant mountain on his back of a turtle, and how it was held until the battle was over and then sank into the earth. Well, then, dadgum, if 2 days later, if they're not saying scientists NASA or whatever it is have come out showing that there's two huge blobs in the center of the Earth. And if this blob was stuck up, it would actually make it so that the space station would have to orbit around it or be diverted around it. Like, whoa. It's crazy. There's a whole continent. It says it two big places, one in the Pacific and one in the off the African and the Atlantic African coast in the Atlantic, and they are the size of a continent inside of the Earth, like two giant mountains of liquid metal. And it also reminds me of some stuff earlier in this story talking about the mountain of liquid metal and the secret mountain of tin. Everybody keeps talking about disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Aliens, aliens, aliens. And all these texts keep saying they're not coming from above, but they're coming from beside and from within. That there are some that are going to be sent back from above, but they're ones that left here in the first place to hide among the stars. Um, and now we have all these sciences which are looking to affect time, space, dimension, things that for the longest times have been attributed to the Creator's realm, and to begin to say we understand and know them well enough to begin to poke our finger into them. The disclosure is that this is all just something that's already happened before. And each time they get closer to their goal, until at some point in time they're going to make a boo-boo big enough that it's going to take a cosmic Christ to put it back into order. And whoever's here that's going to be alive to witness it is going to witness the most amazing thing that you've ever seen and heard. I mean, just think about the descriptions of these angels. I mean, dude who made Avatar had nothing. His blue chickens, nothing on the description of these angels that are coming back. Well, I'm going to skip past all the calendars. We're going to go down to 82. And I believe that might be what my trigger point was this morning. 62 and 82 being close started. That's something else I didn't do this morning. I didn't put the link in either. Found myself. I don't know about any of the rest of you YouTubers, but I've always had a problem with listening to myself since I was a kid. Yeah, and the calendars are pretty bulky. Okay, 82. And now I have shown you, my son Methuselah, every sight which I saw prior to your birth. I will relate another vision which I saw before I was married. They resemble each other. The first one when I was learning a book, and the other before I was married to your mother, I saw a potent vision, and on account of these things besought the Lord. I was lying down in the house of my grandfather Malel, when I saw in a vision heaven purifying and snatched away, and falling to the earth. I likewise the earth absorbed by a great abyss, and mountain suspended over mountains. Oh wow, here's the big mountains again. Let me bump over here. I see the tree. One of the things she mentions about all the people who did the math and how the Stonehenge looked at. Yes, that's. Yep. And the I mentioned a little bit earlier too that they're in looking at some more videos this week about the calendars, how they're finding out that's the closest calendar that was ever created, quite possibly. This great abyss comes back in Revelation too. Hills were sinking upon hills. Lofty trees were gliding off from their trunks and were in the act of being projected and sinking into the abyss. I don't know if anybody studied mud fossil stuff, but these quote unquote giant trees and they're missing branches and all that kind of stuff. Interesting. Being alarmed at these things, my voice faltered. I cried out and said, "The earth is destroyed." Then my grandfather Malel raised me up and said to me, "Why do you thus cry, my son, and wherefore thus do you lament?" I related to him the whole vision which I had seen, and he said to me, "Confirmed is that which you have seen, my son, and potent the vision of your dream respecting every secret sin of the earth. Its substance shall sink into the abyss, and a great destruction take place. Now, my son, rise up and beseech the Lord of glory, for you are faithful, that a remnant may be left upon the earth, and that he would not wholly destroy it. My son, all this calamity upon the earth comes down from heaven. Upon earth shall there be a great destruction." Then I arose, prayed, and entreated, and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world, explaining everything to my son Methuselah. When I went down below, and looking up to heaven, beheld the sun proceeding from the east, and the moon descending to the west, a few scattered stars, and everything which God has shown me from the beginning, I blessed the Lord of judgment and magnified him, because he has sent forth the sun from its chambers of the east, and ascending to the rising face of heaven, it might spring up and pursue the path which is pointed out to it. I lifted up my hands in righteousness and blessed the Holy and the Great One. I spoke with the breath of my mouth and with the tongue of flesh, which God has formed for all the sons of mortal men, that which they may speak, giving them breath, a mouth, and a tongue to converse with. Blessed are you, O Lord the King, great and powerful in your greatness, Lord of all creatures of heaven, King of kings, God of the whole world, whose reign, whose kingdom, and whose mighty majesty endure forever and ever. From generation to generation shall your dominion exist. All the heavens are your throne forever, and all the earth your footstool forever and ever. For you have made them, and over all you reign. No act whatsoever exceeds your power. With your wisdom is unchangeable, nor from your throne or from your presence is it ever averted. You know all things, see and hear them, nor is anything concealed from you, for you perceive all things. The angels of your heavens have transgressed, and on mortal flesh shall your wrath remain until the day of the great judgment. Now then, O God, Lord and mighty King, I entreat you and beseech you to grant my prayer, that a posterity may be left to me on earth, and that the whole human race may not perish, that the earth may not be left destitute, and destruction take place forever. O my Lord, let the race perish from off the earth which has offended you, but a righteous and upright race established for a posterity forever. Hide not your face, O Lord, from the prayer of your servant. After this, I saw another dream and explained it all to you, my son. Enoch arose and said to his son Methuselah, "To you, my son, will I speak. Hear my word, and incline your ear to the visionary dream of your father. Before I married your mother Edna, I saw a vision on my bed." We know his wife's name. "And behold, a cow sprung forth from the earth, and this cow was white. Afterwards, a female heifer sprung forth, and with it another heifer. One of them was black, and one was red." Oh, wow. I don't know if y'all know about the sacrifices and the heifers, but this sounds like it might correlate. And also the white bison, I wonder if that correlates too. The black heifer then struck the red one and pursued it over the earth. From that period, I could see that nothing more of the red heifer, but the black one increased in bulk, and a female heifer came with him. After this, I saw that many cows proceeded forth, resembling him and following after him. The first female young one also went out in the presence of the first cow, and sought the red heifer, but found him not. And she lamented with a great lamentation while she was seeking him. Then I looked until that first cow came to her, from which time she became silent and ceased to lament. Afterward, she calved another white cow, and again calved many cows and black heifers. In my sleep, I also perceived a white bull, which in like manner grew and became a large white bull. After him, many white cows came forth resembling him, and they began to calve many other white calves, which resembled them, and followed each other. Oh, here we got the two seed lines again. Again, I looked attentively while sleeping, and surveyed heaven above. And behold, a single star fell from heaven, which being raised up, ate and fed among the cows. Now, notice that the star is eating and hanging out with cows. After that, I perceived other large and black cows, and behold, all of them changed their stalls and pastures, while their young began to lament one with another. Again I looked at my vision and surveyed heaven, when behold, I saw many stars which descended, and projected themselves from heaven to where the first star was. Whoa, I just know what this story is relating. It's the first original satanic fall, and then the fall of the 200 afterwards being at the same place. Into the midst of those young ones, while the cows were with them, feeding in the midst of them. I looked at and observed them, when behold, they all acted after manner of horses, and began to approach the young cows, all of whom became pregnant, and brought forth elephants, camels, and asses. At these all the cows were alarmed and terrified, when they began biting with their teeth, swallowing, and striking with their horns. Now, once again, I'll go back so we realize that, okay, the angels descend, a whole bunch of them. They now make themselves look like horses, go in with the cows, and bring forth all kinds of different kinds of animals. Um, I know for sure that this is that same story. At these, all the cows were alarmed and terrified when they began biting with their teeth, swallowing, and striking with their horns. They began also to devour the cows, and behold, all the children of the earth trembled, shook with terror, and suddenly fled away. Again I perceived them, when they began to strike and swallow each other, and the earth cried out. Then I raised my eyes a second time toward heaven, and saw in a vision that, behold, there came forth from heaven, as it were the likeness of white men. One came forth from thence, and three with him. Those three who came forth last seized me by my hand, and raising me up from the generation of the earth, elevated me to a high station. Then they showed me a lofty tower on the earth, while every hill became diminished. And they said, remain here until you perceive what shall come upon those elephants, camels, and asses, upon the stars, and upon all the cows. Then I looked at that one of the four white men who came forth first. He seized the first star which fell down from heaven, and binding it hand and foot, he cast it into a valley narrow, deep, and stupendous, and gloomy. We just read about that valley earlier. Then one of them drew his sword, and gave it to the elephants, camels, and asses, who began to strike each other, and the whole earth shook on account of them. And when I looked in the vision, behold, one of those four angels who came forth, hurled from heaven, collected together, and took all the great stars, whose forms partly resembled that of horses, and binding them all hand and foot, cast them into the cavities of the earth. So now we have these cast into holding inside the earth. That means I read the same thing 3 times this week, because I did not read this part over. Then one of those four went into the white cows and taught them a mystery. While the cow was trembling, it was born and became a man, and fabricated for himself a large ship. In this he dwelt, and three cows dwelt with him in that ship, which covered them. Again I lifted up my eyes toward heaven, and saw a lofty roof. Above it were seven cataracts, which poured forth on a certain village much water. Again I looked, and behold, there was a fountain open on the earth in that large village. The water began to boil up and rose over the earth, so that the village was not seen, while in the whole the soil was covered with water. Much water was over it, darkness and clouds. Then I surveyed the height of this water, and it was elevated above the village. It flowed over the village and stood higher than the earth. Then all the cows which were collected there Then all the cows which were collected there, while I looked on them, were drowned, swallowed up, and destroyed in the water. But the ship floated above it. All the cows, the elephants, the camels, and the asses were drowned on the earth, and all cattle. Nor could I perceive them. Neither were they able to get out, but perished and sunk into the deep. Again I looked in the vision, until those cataracts from the lofty roof were removed, and the fountains of the earth became equalized, while other depths were opened, into which the water began to descend until the dry ground appeared. The ship remained on the earth. The darkness receded, and it became light. Then the white cow, which became a man, went out of the ship, and the three cows with him. One of the three cows was white, resembling that cow. One of them was red as blood, one of them was black, and the white cow left them. I believe this is saying that Shem, Ham, and Japheth were white, black, and red. So our three main color of races. Then he began wild beasts and birds to bring forth. Of all these the different kinds assembled together: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, wild boars, foxes, rabbits, and the hunzar, the sisset and the vest, kites, fonkas, and ravens. Then the white cow was born in the midst of them. And they began to bite each other. When the white cow, which was born in the midst of them, brought forth a wild ass and a white cow at the same time, and after that many wild asses. Then the white cow, which was born, brought forth a black wild sow and a white sheep. My document here is showing how that these descriptions are Abraham being the first white cow, the second, or the next one born, another white cow, Isaac, and then the wild ass and white cow, Esau and Jacob. That wild sow also brought forth many swine, and that sheep brought forth 12 sheep, the 12 patriarchs. When those 12 sheep grew up, they delivered one of them to the asses. I'm saying Joseph to the Midianites. I'm going to go ahead and just read through instead of the interpretation, because sometimes they're fitting these things in themselves. Again, those asses delivered the sheep to the wolves, and he grew up in the midst of them. Then the Lord brought the 11 other sheep, that they might dwell and feed with him in the midst of the wolves. They multiplied, and there was abundance of pasture for them. But the wolves began to frighten and oppress them, while they destroyed their young ones, and they left their young in torrents of deep water. Now the sheep began to cry out on account of their young, and fled for refuge to their Lord. One, however, which was saved, escaped, and went away to the wild asses. I beheld the sheep moaning, crying, and petitioning their Lord with all their might, until the Lord of the sheep descended at their voice from his lofty habitation, went to them, and inspected them. He called to that sheep which had been secretly stolen away from the wolves, and told him to make the wolves understand that they were not to touch the sheep. Then that sheep went to the wolves with the word of the Lord. When another met him and proceeded with him, both of them together entered the dwelling of the wolves, and conversing with them made them understand that henceforwards they were not to touch the sheep. Afterwards I perceived the wolves greatly prevailing over the sheep with their whole force. The sheep cried out, and their Lord came to them. He began to strike the wolves, who commenced a grievous lamentation, but the sheep were silent, nor from that time did they cry out. I then looked at them until they departed from the wolves. The eyes of the wolves were blind, who went out and followed them with all their might. But the Lord of the sheep proceeded with them and conducted them. All his sheep followed him. His countenance was terrific and splendid, and glorious was his aspect. Yet the wolves began to follow the sheep until they overtook them in a certain lake of water. Then that lake became divided, the water standing up on both sides before their face, that being the Red Sea, and this being Moses parting it. And while their Lord was conducting them, he placed himself between them and the wolves. And the wolves, however, perceived not the sheep, but went into the midst of the lake, following them, and running after them into the lake of water. But when they saw the Lord of the sheep, they turned to fly from before his face. Then the water of the lake returned, and that suddenly, according to its nature, it became full and was raised up until it covered the wolves. And I saw that all of them which had followed the sheep perished and were drowned. But the sheep passed over this water, proceeding into a wilderness, which was without both water and grass, and they began to open their eyes and to see. Then I beheld the Lord of the sheep inspecting them, and giving them water and grass. The sheep already mentioned was proceeding with them and conducting them. And when he had ascended to the top of the lofty rock, the Lord of the sheep sent him to them. Afterwards I perceived their Lord standing before them with an aspect terrific and severe. And when they all beheld him, they were frightened at his countenance. All of them were alarmed and trembled. They cried out after that sheep, and saying to the other sheep who had been with him, and who was in the midst of them, saying, We are not able to stand before our Lord or to look upon him. Then that sheep who conducted them went away and ascended to the top of the rock. When the rest of the sheep began to grow blind and to wander from the path which he had shown them, he knew it not. Their Lord, however, was moved with great indignation against them when the sheep had learned what had happened. He descended from the top of the rock, and coming to them, found that there were many which had become blind, and had wandered from his path. As soon as they beheld him, they feared and trembled at his presence, and became desirous of returning to their fold. Then that sheep, taking with him other sheep, went to those which had wandered, and afterwards began to kill them. They were terrified at his countenance. Then he caused those which had wandered to return, who went back to their fold. I likewise saw there in a vision that this sheep became a man, built a house for the Lord of sheep, and made them all stand in the house. And that's a tabernacle. I perceived also that the sheep which proceeded to meet this sheep, their conductor, died. I saw too that all the great sheep perished, while the smaller ones rose up in their place, entered into a pasture, and approached a river of water. Then that sheep, their conductor, who became a man, was separated from them. All the sheep sought after him, and cried for him with a bitter lamentation. I saw likewise that they ceased to cry after that sheep, and passed over the river of water, and that there rose other sheep, all of whom conducted them, instead of those who were dead, and who had previously conducted them. Then I saw that the sheep entered into a godly place, and a territory delectable and glorious. I saw also that they became satiated, and that their house was in the midst of a delectable territory, and that sometimes their eyes were opened, and that sometimes they were blind, until another sheep arose and conducted them. He brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. Then dogs, foxes, and wild boars began to devour them, until again another sheep arose, the master of the flock, one of themselves a ram, to conduct them. This ram began to butt on every side those dogs, foxes, and wild boars, until they all perished. His eyes all until they all wait until they all perished. I've lost something here. His eyes and saw the ram in the must be some missing text. His eyes and saw the ram in the midst of them, who had laid aside his glory. And he began to strike the sheep without treading upon them, and behaving himself without dignity. Then their Lord sent the former sheep again to a still different sheep, and raised him up to be a ram, and conducted them instead of that sheep who had laid aside his glory. That being the story of David. Going therefore to him and conversing with him alone, he raised up that ram, and made him a prince and leader of the flock. All the time of the dogs troubled the sheep. The first ram paid respect to this latter ram. Then the latter ram arose and fled away from before his face, and I saw that those dogs caused the first ram to fall. But this latter ram arose and conducted the smaller sheep. That ram likewise begat many sheep and died. Then there was a smaller sheep, a ram, instead of him, which became a prince and a leader conducting the flock. And the sheep increased in size and multiplied, and all the dogs, foxes, and wild boars feared and fled away from him. That ram also struck and killed all the wild beasts, so that they could not again prevail in the midst of the sheep, nor at any time ever snatch them away. And the house was made large and wide, a lofty tower being built upon it by the sheep, for the Lord of the sheep. The house was low, but the tower was elevated and very high. Then the Lord of the sheep stood upon that tower, and caused a full table to approach before him. Again I saw that those sheep wandered, and went various ways, forsaking that their house, and that their Lord called to some among them, who he sent to them. But these sheep began to kill, and when one of them was saved from slaughter, he leaped, and he cried out against those who were desirous of killing him. But the Lord of the sheep delivered him from their hands, and made him ascend to him and remain with him, and that being Elijah. Oh, my stomach's starting to do some turning again here. He sent also many others to them to testify, and with lamentations to exclaim against them. Again I saw when some of them forsook the house of their Lord and his tower, wandering on all sides and growing blind. I saw that the Lord of the sheep made a great slaughter among them in their pasture, until they cried out to him in consequence of that slaughter. Then he departed from that place of his habitation, and left them in the power of lions, tigers, wolves, and zept, and in the power of foxes and of every beast, and the zept being hyenas. And the wild beasts began to tear them. I saw too that he forsook the house of their fathers and their tower, giving them all into the power of the lions to tear and devour them, into the power of every beast. Then I began to cry out with all my might, imploring the Lord of the sheep, and showing him how the sheep were devoured by all the beasts of prey. But he looked on in silence, rejoicing that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off, and leaving them the power of every beast for food. He called also 70 shepherds, and resigning to them the care of the sheep, that they might overlook them. Many people believe that these 70 shepherds are the Sanhedrin. And if you look into what's going on in world news right now, you're going to see the Sanhedrin's trying to embed itself in the world court. And it should be very scary. Saying to them and to their associates, every one of you henceforwards overlook the sheep, and whoever I command you do, and I will deliver them to you numbered. I will tell you which of them shall be slain. These destroy. And he delivered the sheep to them. Then he called to another and said, understand, and watch everything which the shepherd shall do to these sheep, for many more of them shall perish than I have commanded. Of every excess and slaughter which the shepherd shall commit, there shall be an account, as a many may, how many may have perished by my command, and how many they may have destroyed of their own heads. All right, now this is showing how the Creator gave authority to some to be destroyed because of their actions, and the rulers, or the 70s, those who were in authority, destroyed them. But they then also destroyed many others. And they have to give account to those they destroy that they weren't told that they were allowed to destroy. Of all the destruction brought about by each of the shepherds, there shall be an account, and according to the number I will cause a recital to be made before me, how many they have destroyed of their own heads, and how many they have delivered up to their destruction, that I may have this testimony against them, that I may know all their proceedings, and that delivering the sheep to them I may see what they will do, whether they will act as I have commanded them or not. Of this, however, they shall be ignorant, neither shall they make any explanation to them, neither shall you reprove them, but there shall be an account of all the destruction done by them in their respective seasons. Then they began to kill and destroy more than that was commanded to them. And they left the sheep in the power of the lions, so that very many of them were devoured and swallowed up by lions and tigers, and wild boars preyed upon them. That tower they burnt and overthrew that house. Then I grieved extremely on account of that tower, and because the house of the sheep was overthrown. Neither was I afterward able to perceive whether they again entered that house. The shepherds likewise and their associates delivered to all the wild beasts that they might devour them, each of them in his season, according to his number was delivered up, each of them. One with another was described in a book. How many of them, one with another, were destroyed in a book? More, however, than was ordered. Every shepherd killed and destroyed. Then I began to weep, and was greatly indignant on account of the sheep. In like manner also I saw in the vision him who wrote, how he wrote down one destroyed by the shepherds every day. He ascended, remained, and exhibited each of his books to the lords of the sheep, containing all which they had done, and all which each of them had made away with, and all which they had delivered up to destruction. He took the book up in his hands, read it, sealed it, and deposited it. After this, I saw shepherds overlooking for 12 hours. And behold, 3 of the sheep departed, arrived, went in, and began building all which was fallen down in that house. That'd be Zerubbabel, Joshua, and Nehemiah. That's a reference to the building of the next temple or the second temple. But the wild boars hindered them, although they prevailed not. Again they began to build as before, and raised up that tower which was called a lofty tower. And again they began to place before the tower a table, with every impure and unclean kind of bread upon it. Wherever also all the sheep were blind, and could not see, as were the shepherds likewise. Thus they were delivered up to the shepherds for a great destruction, who trod them under foot and devoured them. What this is an indication of here, the temple had specific sacrifices that were performed within it. They each represented a specific act or time within the creation story. And each one of these particular things was done with a particular type of animal, which was listed as clean. They were also the animals that you were permitted to eat within the culture. Um, it's saying they came back, they started to rebuild this temple, but they were putting every kind of defiled thing on the altar, which means they were sacrificing to the moon, the sun. They weren't sacrificing just to the Lord. And if they were doing it to the Lord of hosts, they were doing it with the sacrifices that were typically given to those of the lower order or angels. As I've explained before, all this physical stuff affects spirituality somehow, and there are spiritual orders. Angels do accept sacrifices and all that kind of stuff as well if they have fallen outside of the system. Anyway, that's go into that some other time. Uh, and it says that this happened because the sheep were blind and the shepherds were blind. Yet was their Lord silent until all the sheep in the field were destroyed. The shepherds and the sheep were all mixed together, but they did not save them from the power of the beasts. Then he who wrote the book ascended, exhibited it, and read it at the residence of the Lord of the sheep. He petitioned for them and prayed, pointing out every act of the shepherds, and terrifying before and testifying before him against them all. Then taking the book, he deposited with him and departed. And I observed during the time that thus 37 shepherds were overlooking, all of whom finished their respective periods as the first. Others then received them into their hands, and they might overlook them in their respective periods, and every shepherd in his own period. Afterwards I saw in the vision that all the birds of the heaven arrived, eagles, the avest, kites, and ravens. The eagle instructed them all. They began to devour the sheep, to peck out their eyes, and to eat up their bodies. The sheep then cried out, for their bodies were devoured by the birds. I also cried out, and groaned in my sleep against the shepherd which overlooked the flock. And I looked while the sheep were eaten by the dogs, and by the eagles, and by the kites. They neither left them their body, nor their skin, nor their muscles, until their bones alone remained, until their bones fell upon the ground, and the sheep became diminished. I observed likewise during the time that 23 shepherds were overlooking, who completed their respective periods, 58 periods. Then were small lambs born of those white sheep, who began to open their eyes and see, crying out to the sheep. The sheep, however, cried not out to them, neither did they hear what they uttered to them, but were deaf, blind, obdurate in the greatest degrees. I saw in the vision that the ravens flew down upon those lambs, that they seized one of them, and that tearing the sheep in pieces they devoured them. I saw also that the horns grew upon those lambs, and that the ravens lighted down upon their horns. I saw too that a large horn sprouted out of an animal among the sheep, and that their eyes were opened. He looked at them. Their eyes were wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Debella saw him, all of whom ran to him. And beside this, all the eagles, the avest, the ravens, the kites were still carrying off the sheep, flying down upon them and devouring them. The sheep were silent, but the Debella lamented and cried out. The Debella, it says here, quite possibly ibex, symbolizing Alexander the Great, as that was his symbol. This is quite possibly talking about that period of time of history. I remember that when me and the kids went through this the first time, we sat down and correlated all these things through the scripture and through history and how many of them lined up. And it was with the recent discovery in the Dead Sea Scrolls that they believe they proved that these texts were pre-flood, which makes this all a prophetic history. Then the ravens contended and struggled with them. They wished among them to break his horn, but they prevailed not over him. I looked on them until the shepherds, the eagles, the avest, and kites came, who cried out to the ravens to break the horn of the Debella, to contend with him, and to kill him. But he struggled with them and cried out, that help might come to him. Then I perceived that the man who came, who had written down the names of the shepherds, and who ascended up before the Lord of the sheep, he brought assistance, and caused every one to see him descending to the help of the Debella. I perceived likewise that the Lord of the sheep came to them in wrath, while all those who saw him fled away. All fell down in his tabernacle before his face, while all the eagles, the avest, ravens, and kites assembled, and brought with them all the sheep of the field. All came together, and strove to break the horn of the Debella. Then I saw that the man who wrote the book at the word of the Lord opened the book of the destruction, of that destruction which was the last 12 shepherds, which the last 12 shepherds wrought, and pointed out before the Lord of the sheep that they destroyed more than those who preceded them. I saw also that the Lord of the sheep came to them, and taking in his hand the scepter of his wrath seized the earth, which became rent asunder, while all the beasts and birds of heaven fell from the sheep, and sunk into the earth which closed over them. I saw too that a large sword was given to the sheep, who went forth against all the beasts of the field to slay them. But all the beasts and birds of heaven fled away from before their face. And I saw a throne erected in a delectable land. Upon this sat the Lord of the sheep, who received all the sealed books, which were opened before him. Then the Lord called the first 7 white ones, and commanded them to bring before him the first of the first stars, which preceded the stars, whose form partly resembled that of horses, the first star, which fell down first, and they brought him all before him. And he spoke to the man who wrote in his presence, who was one of the 7 white ones, saying, Take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered up the sheep, and who receiving them killed more of them than I commanded. Behold, I saw them all bound and standing before him. First came on trial of the stars, which being judged and found guilty went to the place of punishment. They thrust them into a place deep and full of flaming fire, and full of pillars of fire. Then the 70 shepherds were judged, and being found guilty, they were thrust into the flaming abyss. At that time likewise I perceived that one abyss was thus opened in the midst of the earth, which was full of fire. And to this were brought the blind sheep, which being judged and found guilty, were all thrust into the abyss of fire on the earth and burnt. The abyss was on the right of that house, and I saw the sheep burning and their bones consuming. I stood beholding him, emerging that ancient house, while they brought out its pillars, every plant in it, and the ivory enfolding it. They brought it out, and deposited it in the place of the right side of the earth. I also saw the Lord of the sheep produced a new house, great and loftier than the former, which he bound by the former circular spot. All its pillars were new, and its ivory new, as well as more abundant than the former ancient ivory which he had brought out. And while all the sheep which were left were in the midst of it, all of the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the heaven fell down and worshipped them, petitioning them and obeying them in everything. Then those 3 who were clothed in white and who were holding me by my hand had before caused me to ascend, while the hand of him spoke held me. The hand of him who spoke held me, raised me up, and placed me in the midst of the sheep before the judgment took place. The sheep were all white with wool long and pure. Then all who had perished and had been destroyed, every beast of the field and every bird of heaven, assembled in that house, while the Lord of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because all were good, and had come back again to his dwelling. And I saw that they laid down the sword which had been given to the sheep, and returned to his house, sealing it up in the presence of the Lord. And this is showing that we have the hope that even after death, there is going to be a regathering of the sheep, those that were trampled upon. All the sheep would have been enclosed in that house had it been capable of containing them, and the eyes of all were open, gazing on the good one, nor was there one among them who did not behold him. I likewise perceived that the house was large, wide, and extremely full. I saw too that a white cow was born, whose horns were great, and that all the beasts of the field and all the birds of heaven were alarmed at him, and entreated him at all times. Then I saw that the nature of all of them was changed, and that they became white cows, and that the first who was in the midst of them spoke, when that word became a large beast, upon the head of which were great and black horns. While the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over them and over all the cows. I lay down in the midst of them. I awoke and saw the whole. This is the vision which I saw, lying down and waking. Then I blessed the Lord of righteousness and gave glory to him. Afterwards I wept abundantly, nor did my tears cease, so that I became incapable of enduring it. While I was looking on, they flowed on account of what I saw, for all was come and gone by. Every individual circumstance respecting their conduct of mankind was seen by me. In that night I remembered my former dream, and therefore wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. And I need to take a little break real quick. Oh. I've got to eat 3 or 4 moringa nuts. Uh, the moringa. Oh man, I forgot how hard it is to peel these without 2 thumbs. The moringa tree is the yeah, the famine tree. It produces a nut that is higher than all types of antioxidants, vitamins, calcium, than anything else on the earth. It can be ground into flour. One thing I've found, it actually helps lower blood sugar. It also works as an anti-inflammatory. I am about 30 minutes from my next dose of kratom. But as I've been sitting here talking, I have a spot that has been giving me a trouble for a couple of days, has gone from kind of a funny tingly feeling to a kind of nauseous, and it's swapping from the nauseous. That's why you kept seeing me gulp occasionally while I was reading. And it's gone from that to starting to hurt. And this will put a little something in there to keep it from eating itself up with all the extra acids. Oops, I lost that one. Give me a little anti-inflammatory. I did eat a small breakfast of potato this morning, just to make sure I had something in my stomach. With Crohn's, I can often eat normally after we get past this stage. Sometimes these little bitty nuts really help to get past that stage in less time. Thanks for being patient with me. It's a little antidote while I'm here. My father passed 2.5 years ago, as many of you know, coming up on 3 years soon in June. And I helped my mother find a new place. He left good provision for her, and began to buy this house for my mother. It's not something I particularly wanted, but from the day I come down to help Mom, it was laid on my heart that I was supposed to really pay attention to what my dad had done here, that he didn't really prepare this for himself, but that he prepared it for me. You get weird stuff in your head going on like that. You think, okay, that's delusional. But this yard has bitter melon. Bitter melon, when made into a tea, is extremely good for diabetes. And even eaten. This yard has moringa. And you can have a catastrophe, and as long as you have moringa nuts, you're going to live for a while and do decently. Plus, it's also one of the healing herbs for the gut. This property has aloes all around it. Part of my juicing regimen is quite often, and I was doing it every day until I took stock of how fast my aloe gardening was going and started planting more aloe and using less for the time being until I can catch up to a perpetual. But I'd use a tablespoon or two in my juicing of the wheatgrass. I could have a full-blown wheatgrass farm going here, and did have some going at one point in time. He had all the stuff laid out needed for growing it. I predominantly eat a vegetable lettuce and chicken diet now, and I have outside the earth boxes for producing my vegetables, and hydroponic stack garden for producing my lettuces. Um, he left a hydroponic system which can be used indoor or outdoor, which as soon as Florida legalizes, I will begin to grow in it again as well. My cannabis, um, something that I have found that is very good for me to snack on with my stomach the way it is. The oils are very soothing, and that is avocado. He left 3 avocado trees in this yard. And during this period of time of recovery, I've used that in juicing and in other things, and I've found that avocados work very good at relieving a gut that's in pain. If it's not receiving other foods, sometimes it will allow the avocado to go in there and absorb the acids and pass through. Um, so as I looked around, I saw more and more that this house was built for my healing, and that he meant for me to be here during the period of time I heal. And I'm going to throw this out there and probably get shot in the foot for it, but one of the things my dad thought was I was never going to heal until I was divorced. And ironically, this is also part of what instituted and caused all of that as well. So it's been weird. Um, I do thank everybody who's listening to me ramble today, who's joined us and been able to talk. Oh, gee, good to see you come by today. Thank you, buddy. I got It's funny. OG Bobby Thompson, John. I'll get it out in a minute. OG Bobby Johnson. I had been following a different OG Bobby Johnson for several years in the cannabis community, and a lot of people had been wondering where he had disappeared to. And then this OG shows up, and everybody was confused for a few weeks as to who he was. Me, of course, still being subscribed to the other channel, quickly realized I had two of them, and he's been a cool dude, been good to the community, and thanks for joining us today. I hope your chores are going good this morning, average girl. This being my one day of not doing chores, I hope my chores go good tomorrow morning because I will stack them up today. I tell you, if you ever get a chance to take a Sabbath day, a day where you get everything set up so that you can have 24 hours to do nothing but relax, rest, study, meditate. Um, it says that when you do that, it frees up your spirit to receive wisdom. Now, this is in the spiritual teachings. As your body takes that rest, it spiritually heals you. As you are spiritually healed, we see physical healing occur as well. Because many of our illnesses are caused by the curses that are here due to the yin and yang. You know, we've done something and it comes back around. Um, but those cycles can be broken. Those cycles can be made positive. Back to what we're talking about, you know, that hope in the Creator. That those mistakes that we have made have been reversed. Now that we are living and walking, trying to do what's good and positive. Oh, I feel you for you, average girl. You've got a lot of cleaning to do today. Oh, yes, Jetta Joe, and I'm learning how much stress in our life, not taking care of it properly, becomes a physical burden. Yes, good point, Jetta. Don't overdo it. I'm giving my second in my stomach. It takes about 10-15 minutes for the stuff to go through it. It used to be my first pain spot. there wasn't a single item I could put in my mouth that didn't hurt within 15 minutes of me eating. And if I didn't have my kratom in my system before that pain peaked, I was unable to keep my food in my stomach for weeks. And of course, 2.5 years ago, before my major decline this last time, I was at 210 pounds. And over that period of time, I went down to 140 pounds. I lost a huge amount of muscle and fat. Oh, average girl, you're into the spring cleaning. I'm hearing a lot of people doing that. Yep, I started a few weeks ago. I've got a garage sale sitting out front that I've been doing on Fridays and Sundays. I didn't do it this week because I had the boy, but I will do it tomorrow. That was the one I needed. Everybody worries about the high cannabis, the euphoria, and all that kind of stuff, but in a person who has pain, sometimes that moment of euphoria is the only time you don't feel constant pain. And if you're a person who's had pain and had to be on medication even for short periods, you know how aggravating that can be. Now imagine that amplified by months or years or continual. That brief moment can give you a hope that it can go away in the future. That brief moment can give you the relief you need for your mind to get over the negative death feelings that come with continual pain. Um, I guess it's the best way to explain that part of it. It's it can be abused. Everything can be abused. That same moment of euphoria or elevation that relieves a person who has physical pain can take a person who has post-traumatic stress disorder and give them enough relief from that mental oppression and mental pain that they are constantly under. PTSD is like pain for the spirit or the soul. It's a pain that doesn't go away, and it causes you to react as if you're in pain in your spirit or your soul. And sometimes that brief moment of euphoria is that break that reminds us that there is a freedom coming that's permanent, that all these traumatic things that continue in the world around us every day that trigger us in our PTSD, in our traumatic state, which keep us from healing properly, because you can't love in a state of PTSD properly. Um, I know that's going to be controversial saying, but if you're reacting in pain, you're not reacting in love in some instances. And it's learning how to react in love while in pain that is important. And sometimes that little break from that spiritual anguish can help you progress in healing toward that. My personal belief is that we're all undergoing a spiritual trauma, and that we were born into it. And the whole reason why I'm doing these is because of the hope I've found. The hope that turned my life around, that made it so I'm starting to heal and get well, uh, and being able to share that too. Hence the name throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know, too often we give up on the Creator because unrighteous people have been in the positions of authority and have spiritually whipped us themselves. Um, Spiritually judged us to the point where we have no self worth. It's getting past those judgments, past those traumas, getting into the understand that we can live and show forth a positive reaction to those traumas, as opposed to repeating the cycle, getting into a battle of words or a battle of minds or positions of pride. Um, uh, I'm just trying to think of other areas that this affects in our lives. Um, but PTSD does cause us to react in a selfish manner because we're reacting. We've been hurt so much that we're reacting out. We're not. I can't think of a word other than react. Proactive is what you are if you're not reacting. We become proactive. You know, they hit us with hate, and we take that trauma that we've received over and over, and we say, "Hey, you've gone through the same judgment I see. You've had your psyche tore apart by these same religious systems I see, and thereby are able to communicate on that same level because we're in the same pain. We're able to say, hey, let's find hope together." And we made it up to number 90. I know we're at 2 hours, but we're pretty close to the end of this text, and I was really hoping to finish. I've been digging through the Vedas and stuff. I've really got some cool things that correlate and show. I've found some really neat astrotheological things that uh, have been misinterpreted to us. That will be neat to see being read outright what they actually say in light of the other things that we read. And I'm going to continue in now with Enoch. And now and now my son Methuselah, call to me all your brethren, and assemble for me all the children of your mother. For a voice calls me, and the Spirit is poured out upon me, that I might show you everything which shall happen to you forever. Then Methuselah went, called to him all his brethren, and assembled his kindred, and conversing with all his children in truth. Enoch said, hear, my children, every word of your father, and listen in uprightness to the voice of my mouth. For I would gain your attention while I address you, my beloved. Be attached to integrity and walk in it. Approach not integrity with a double heart, nor be associated with a double-minded men, but walk, my children, in righteousness, which will conduct you in a good path, and be truth your companion. All right, here we're. Yeah, that was a good segue right into this chapter, I guess, because here we're talking about those very things that are the path, the things that help us prevail. For I know that for oppression will exist and prevail on the earth, that on earth great punishment shall in the end take place, and that there shall be a consummation of all iniquity, which shall be cut off from its root, and every fabric is raised by it shall pass away. Iniquity, however, shall again be renewed and consummated on earth. Every act of crime and every act of oppression and impiety shall a second time embrace. When therefore iniquity, sin, blasphemy, tyranny, and every evil work shall increase, and when transgression, impiety, and uncleanness also shall increase, then upon them all shall great punishment be inflicted from heaven. The holy Lord shall go forth in wrath, and upon them all shall great punishment from heaven be inflicted. The holy Lord shall go forth in wrath and with punishment, that he may execute judgment upon earth. In those days oppression shall be cut off from its roots, and iniquity with fraud shall be eradicated, perishing from under heaven. Well, that's a pretty big promise, considering if we look at how our monetary system and our whole everything we got right now is based on fraud. Puts a real indictment about where we're at. Every place of strength shall be surrendered with its inhabitants. With fire shall it be burnt. They shall be brought from every part of the earth, and be cast into a judgment of fire. They shall perish in wrath, and by a judgment overpouring them forever. Righteousness shall be raised up from slumber, and wisdom shall be raised up and conferred upon them. Then shall the roots of iniquity be cut off, sinners perish by the sword, and blasphemers be annihilated everywhere. Those who mediate oppression and those who blaspheme by the sword shall perish. And now, my children, I will describe and point out to you a path of righteousness and a path of oppression. I will again point them out to you, that you may know what is to come. Hear now, my children, and walk in the path of righteousness, but shun that of oppression. For all who walk in the path of iniquity shall perish forever and ever. That which was written by Enoch. He wrote all this instruction of wisdom for every man of dignity and every judge of the earth, for all my children who shall dwell upon earth, and for subsequent generations, conducting themselves uprightly and peaceably. Let not your spirit be grieved on account of the times, for the Holy, the Great One, has prescribed a period to all. Let the righteous man arise from slumber. Let him arise and proceed in the path of righteousness, in all of its paths. And let him advance in goodness and eternal clemency. Mercy shall be showed to the righteous man. Upon him shall be conferred integrity and power forever. In goodness and in righteousness shall he exist, and shall walk in everlasting light. But sin shall perish in eternal darkness, nor be seen from that time forevermore. After this, Enoch began to speak from a book. And Enoch said, concerning the children of righteousness, concerning the elect of the world, concerning the plant of righteousness and integrity, concerning these things will I speak, and these things will I explain to you, my children. I who am Enoch, in consequence of that which has been shown to me. From my heavenly vision and from the voice of holy angels have I acquired knowledge, and from the tablet of heaven have I acquired understanding. Enoch then began to speak from a book and said, I have been born the 7th in the 1st week, while judgment and righteousness wait with patience. But after me in the 2nd week, great wickedness shall arise, and fraud shall spring forth. In that week, the end of the first shall take place, in which mankind shall be safe. But when the first is completed, iniquity shall grow up, and during the 2nd week he shall execute the decree upon the sinners. Afterwards, in the 3rd week, during its completion, a man of the plant of righteous judgment shall be selected, and after him the plant of righteousness shall come forever. Subsequently, in the 4th week, during its completion, a vision of the holy and righteous shall be seen. The order of generation after generation shall take place, and a habitation shall be made for them. Then in the 5th week, during its completion, the house of glory of dominion shall be erected forever and ever. After that, in the 6th week, all those who are in it shall be darkened. The hearts of them shall be forgetful of witness, and it shall that the man arise and come forth. The Amen shall rise and come forth. And during its completion he shall burn the house of dominion with fire, and all the race of the elect root shall be dispersed. Afterwards, in the 7th week, a preserving generation shall arise. Abundant shall be its deeds, and all its deeds perverse. During its completion, the righteous shall be selected from the everlasting plant of righteousness, and to them shall be given the sevenfold doctrine of his whole creation. Afterwards, there shall be another week, the 8th of righteousness, to which shall be given a sword to execute judgment and justice upon all of the oppressors. And that is reference to the beginning of the millennial reign, which we believe comes after this cataclysm. So this is reference all the way up to that point so far. Sinners shall be delivered up into the hands of the righteous, who during its completion shall acquire habitations by their righteousness, and the house of the great king shall be established for celebration forever. After this, in the 9th week, shall a judgment of righteousness be revealed to the whole world. Every work of the ungodly shall disappear from the whole earth, and the world shall be marred for destruction, and all men shall be on watch for the path of integrity. And after this, on the 7th day of the 10th week, there shall be an everlasting judgment, which shall be executed upon the watchers, and a spacious eternal heaven shall spring forth in the midst of the angels. The former heavens shall depart and pass away, a new heaven shall appear, and all the celestial powers shall shine with sevenfold splendor forever. So that means that new creation after the sixth destruction is going to have seven times the brightness of light. Afterwards, likewise, there will be many weeks, which shall externally exist in goodness and in righteousness. Neither shall sin be named there forever and forever. Who is there of all the children of men capable of hearing the voice of the Holy One without emotion? Who is there capable of thinking his thoughts? Who capable of contemplating all the workmanship of heaven? Who of comprehending the deeds of heaven? He may behold its animation, but not its spirit. He may be capable of conversing respecting it, but not of ascending to it. He may see all the boundaries of these things and meditate upon them, but he can make nothing like them. Who of all men is able to understand the breadth and length of the earth? By whom have been seen the dimensions of all these things? Is it every man who is capable of comprehending the extent of heaven, what its elevation is, and by what it is supported? How many are the numbers of the stars, and where all the luminaries remain at rest? And now, let me exhort you, my children, to love righteousness and to walk in it. For the paths of righteousness are worthy of acceptation, but the path of iniquity shall suddenly fail and be diminished. To men of note in their generation, the paths of oppression and death are revealed, but they keep far from them and do not follow them. Now, too, let me exhort you who are righteous, not to walk in the paths of evil and oppression, nor in the paths of death. Approach them not, that you may not perish, but convert, and choose for yourselves righteousness and a good life. Walk in the paths of peace, that you may live and be found worthy. Retain my words in your inmost thoughts, and obliterate them from your hearts. For I know that sinners counsel men to commit crime craftily. They are not found in every place, nor does every counsel possess a little of them. Woe to those who build iniquity and oppression, and who lay foundations of fraud, for suddenly shall they be subverted, and never obtain peace. Woe to those who build up their houses with crime, for from their very foundations shall their houses be demolished, and by the sword shall they themselves fall. Those too who acquire gold and silver shall justly and suddenly perish. Woe to you who are rich, for in your riches you have trusted. But from your riches you shall be removed, because you have not remembered the Most High in the days of your prosperity. You have committed blasphemy and iniquity, and are destined to the day of affluent blood, of the effusion of blood, to the day of darkness and the day of the great judgment. This I will declare and point out to you, that he who created you will destroy you. When you fall, he will not show you mercy, but your Creator will rejoice in your destruction. Let those then who shall be righteous among you in those days detest sinners and the ungodly. Oh, that my eyes were clouds of water, that I might weep over you, and pour forth my tears like rain, and rest from the sorrows of my heart. Who has permitted you to hate and to transgress? Judgment shall overtake you, ye sinners. The righteous shall not fear the wicked, because God will again bring them into your power, that you may avenge yourselves of them according to your pleasure. Woe to you who shall be so bound by execrations, that you cannot be released from them, the remedy being far removed from you on account of your sins. Woe to you who recompense your neighbor with evil, for you shall be recompensed according to your works. Woe to you, false witnesses, who have aggravated iniquity, for you shall suddenly perish. Woe to you, sinners, who reject the righteous, for you receive or reject at pleasure those who commit iniquity, and their yoke shall prevail over you. Wait and hope, you righteous, for suddenly shall sinners perish from before you, and you shall exercise dominion over them according to your will. In the day of the sufferings of sinners, your offspring shall be elevated and lifted up like eagles. Your nest shall be more exalted than that of the avest. You shall ascend and enter into the cavities of the earth and into the clefts of the rock forever, like cronies from the sight of the ungodly, who will groan over you and weep like sirens. You shall not fear those who trouble you, for restoration shall be yours. A splendid light shall shine around you, and the voice of tranquility shall be heard from heaven. Woe to you sinners, for your wealth makes you resemble saints, but your hearts reproach you, knowing that you are sinners. This word shall testify against you for the remembrance of crime. Woe to you who feed upon the glory of the corn, and drink the strength of the deepest spring, and in the pride of your power tread down the humble. Woe to you who drink water at pleasure, for suddenly shall you be recompensed, consumed, and withered, because you have forsaken the fountain of life. Woe to you who act iniquitously, fraudulently, and blasphemously. There shall be a remembrance against you for evil. Woe to you, powerful, who with power strike down righteousness, for the day of your destruction shall come. While at that very time many and good days shall be the portion of the righteous, even the period of your judgment. The righteous are confident that sinners will be disgraced and perish in the day of iniquity. You shall yourselves be conscious of it, for the Most High will remember your destruction, and the angels shall rejoice over it. What will you do, sinners? And where will you fly in the day of judgment, when you shall hear the words of the prayers of the righteous? You are not like them who in the respect witness against you. You are the associates of sinners. In those days shall the prayers of the righteous come up before the Lord, when the days of judgment shall arrive, and every circumstance of your iniquity be related before the great and the Holy One. Your faces shall be covered with shame, while every deed strengthened by crime shall be rejected. Woe unto you, you sinners, who in the midst of the sea and on dry land are those against whom the evil record exists. Woe to you who squander silver and gold, not obtained in righteousness, and say, we are rich, possess wealth, and have acquired everything which we can desire. Well, doesn't that sound like our elite now? Now then, will we do whatsoever we are disposed to do? For we have amassed silver, our barns are full, and the husbandmen of our families are like overflowing water. Like water shall your falsehood pass away, for your wealth will not be permanent, but shall suddenly ascend from you, because you obtained it all iniquitously. To extreme malediction you are delivered to be delivered up. And now I swear to you, crafty as well as simple ones, that you often contemplating the earth, you who are men, clothe yourselves more elegantly than married women, and both together more so than unmarried ones, everywhere arraying yourselves in majesty and magnificence and authority and in silver, but gold, purple, honor, wealth like water flow away. Erudition, therefore, and wisdom are not theirs. Thus shall they perish, together with their riches, with all their glory, and with their honors. While with disgrace, with slaughter, and in extreme penury, shall the spirits be thrust into a furnace of fire. I have sworn to you, sinners, that neither mountain nor hill has been or shall be subservient to woman. That's interesting. I've never noticed that before. Neither in this way has crime been sent down to us upon earth, but men of their own heads have invented it, and greatly shall those give it efficiency be extricated. Ha ha ha. Oh, that's funny. I'd love to argue that the old Adam Eve thing with somebody on light of this, seeing as it says it's men's fault. It's because we orchestrate the crimes. Barrenness shall not be previously inflicted on woman, but on account of the work of her hands shall she die childless. I have sworn to you, sinners, by the Holy and Great One, that all your evil deeds are disclosed in the heavens, and that none of your oppressive acts are concealed in secret. Think not this in your minds, neither say in your hearts that every crime is not manifested and seen. In heaven it is daily written down before the Most High. Henceforwards shall it be manifested. For every act of oppression which you commit shall be daily recorded until the period of your condemnation. Woe to you, simple ones, for you shall perish in your simplicity. To the wise you will not listen, and that which is good you shall not obtain. Now therefore know that you are destined to the day of destruction. nor hope that sinners shall live, but in process of time you shall die. For you are not marked for redemption, but are destined to the day of the great judgment, to the day of distress and the extreme ignominy of your souls. Woe to you, obdurate in heart, who commit crime and feed on blood. Whence is it that you feed on good things, drink, and are satiated? Is it not because our Lord the Most High has abundantly supplied every good thing upon the earth? To you there shall be no peace. Woe to you who love the deeds of iniquity. Why do you hope for that which is good? Know that you shall be given into the hands of the righteous, who shall cut off your necks, slay you, and show you no compassion. Woe to you who rejoice in the trouble of the righteous, for a grave shall not be dug for you. Woe to you who frustrate the word of the righteous, for you there shall be no hope of life. Woe to you who write down the word of falsehood and the word of the wicked. For their falsehood they record, that they may hear and not forget folly. To them there shall be no peace, but they shall die suddenly. And I've seen that there's been a lot of chatting going on this one, so I'm going to kick back here and see what all's been said. This is a pretty interesting chapter here. Hello, Nita. Thanks for joining me today. Nita's my friend from North Carolina. We play games together. Glad y'all are meeting, getting to know each other. Sleepy the Medicated Meskin. Shabbat Shalom. Or Likum Shalom. Yep. Thank you for joining me today. Been reading through here on Enoch. We're getting toward the ends of it. I had a nice little period of repeating some of what I read last week. But it turned into a nice talk anyway. Love the book of Enoch. So much info right now. Watch and listen to the Watchmen report. A lot of knowledge. Yes, I've watched the Watchmen and have them on my list of things. Be interesting to sit and talk about some of the things that they're a little bit off on. But no, we'll save that for another time. But yeah, they do provide a lot of information, especially connecting it to what's going on now that relates to the different you're wetting Ferdinand sack. I didn't even know my own son's name on screen. That's hilarious. oh, oh, that's a good one. But oh, JC707, cool brother. Long time no see, my friend. Strength and honor. I talked about PTSD a little bit earlier. If you swing back, you'll hear my little chat about it and my use of marijuana and how it helps. Yep, JC. See, know him very well. Good feller there, too. Well, I'm glad everybody's coming and joining today and joining in the conversation and listening. We're almost done here. I'm going to continue on now. I did find it interesting that Enoch does write and acknowledges that there's going to be a discrepancy about who sin enters into the world by. We know from the New Testament that sin entered into the world by Adam. We know through a lot of common theology nowadays, people say, well, Saint or Eve was deceived and it wasn't really Adam's fault. And I believe this calls bullshit on that, showing that Adam, by very choice of following, was the one who was at fault. And I've always held that. It was clear that the curses that come out of that were put into place, and the particular order of how things were to be in this physical realm were put into order because of that instance. Man was put in that place of authority so that there would never ever be a question of that ever again. The consequence of sin of a family was to always fall upon the man. A woman was to be a vessel who was fragile, not to have to undergo all the spiritual attacks, all the physical attacks. It was a man's position to protect, provide, um, and to be responsible for the decisions that would spiritually affect the family. Now we get into all this crazy stuff people get into nowadays about, oh, what's authority mean, this, that, and the other. But it's clear that there is a law of love that was put into place. The man is to always think of all others above and before himself or those under him, which means that anything the woman would say needed to be taken with that type of weight and authority, because it says before God, none of us have any standing, okay? Under the Creator, He looks down. This authority structure is only in place because it locked into place with the sin and the fall. He looks down, he sees us all the same. But because of the fall and because of the yin and the yang and the reaping and the sowing, the male is supposed to receive that spiritual curse and protect his family from it. That's what it was put into place for. And it is a person taking, point fact, it's men abusing their place of authority outside of love and treating their family in ways that are abusive that has brought us to the theology and the position we're in now, where we have thrown the baby out with the bathwater once again, because it's not that the system is wrong, it's the fact that the people within it are not acting properly. That's what the two paths I'm sitting here discussing are talking about: the righteous path and the sinning path. Those that want to work within the order and those that want to work against the order. About, you know, uh, anyways, it really bugs me. I completely understand women's position nowadays because I've watched men, even within my own community, lord over their families. What really bugs me is I sought to show a different example through my life and did not act that way in many circumstances in my life. And yet the flip happens. If a man doesn't accept that place of authority and act in it, he can also receive the curses. And so, anyways, I see now how that balance has to be arrived. It's not just, you have to act properly. You have to do properly. I've already switched screens here. Let me go back. Oh, cool deal, JCC. Well, take care of watching. You can come back and listen to the rest of these at any time. I'm pretty close to done. There's maybe 30 minutes or so left over. You can catch up on it later, but I appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by. Same to you, Jetta Joe. I know I'm running late this week. Everybody have a good thing. I'm going to go ahead and finish reading out here, though. For those that have been in and are leaving, may you have a blessed week. May the Spirit work for you and you have comfort. May things work out for you. May you find a righteous path this week. Woe to them who act impiously, who laud and honor the word of falsehood. You have been lost in perdition and have never led a virtuous life. Woe to you who change the words of integrity. They transgress against the everlasting decree, and cause the heads of those who are not sinners to be trodden down upon the earth. In those days you, O righteous, shall have been deemed worthy of having your prayers rise up in remembrance, and shall have deposited them in testimony before the angels, that they records the sins of the sinners in the presence of the Most High. In those days the nations shall be overthrown, but the families of the nations shall rise again in the day of perdition. Once again, a good segue. The families will rise again. In those days, those who become pregnant shall go forth, carry off their children and forsake them. Their offspring shall slip from them, and while suckling them, they shall forsake them. They shall never return to them, and never instruct their beloved. Again, I swear to you, sinners, that crime has been prepared for the day of blood, which never ceases. They shall worship stones and engraved gold and silver and wooden images. They shall worship impure spirits, demons, and every idol in temples, but no help shall be obtained for them. Their hearts shall become impious through their folly, and their eyes be blinded with mental superstitions. In their visionary dreams shall they be impious and superstitious, lying in all their actions, and worshipping a stone. Altogether shall they perish. But in those days blessed shall they be to whom the word of wisdom is delivered, who point out and pursue the path of the Most High, who walk in the way of righteousness, and who act not impiously with the impious. They shall be saved. Woe to you who expand the crime of your neighbor, for in hell you shall be slain. Woe to you who lay down the foundation of sin and deceit, and who are bitter on earth, for on it shall you be consumed. Woe to you who build your houses by the labor of others, every part of which is constructed with brick and with stone of crime. I tell you, that shall not obtain peace. Woe to you who despise the extent of the everlasting inheritance of your fathers, while your souls follow after idols. For you there shall be no tranquility. I want to back up a verse real quick here, or a passage real quick here. Woe to you who build your houses by labor of others, every part of which is constructed with brick and with stones of crime. It is actually saying that as they committed a crime to build that building, that crime is actually within the stones. And I wanted to back up to say something here because we have these great cataclysms which wipe everything off the earth. Maybe it has to wipe everything off the earth. Maybe these curses are locked in these stones, these buildings built with crime and that kind of stuff, and they have to be destroyed in order for those curses to be broken. I don't know. It's just throwing it out there, a little thought process. Woe to them who commit iniquity and give aid to blasphemy, who slay their neighbor until the day of the great judgment. For your glory shall fall. Malevolence shall he put into your hearts, and the spirit of his wrath shall stir you up, that every one of you may perish by the sword. Then shall all the righteous and holy remember your crimes. In those days shall the fathers be struck down with their children in the presence of each other, and brethren with their brethren shall fall dead, until a river shall flow from their blood. For a man shall not restrain his hand from his children, nor from his children's children. His mercy will be to kill them. And folks, I believe we're getting to this point now because I see men who have no hope of mercy with children of the curse, and it's getting close to bloody. Nor shall the sinners restrain his hand from his honored brother. From the dawn of day to the setting sun shall the slaughter continue. The horse shall wade up to his breast, and the chariot shall sink to its axle in the blood of sinners. In those days the angels shall descend into the places of concealment and gather together in one spot all who have assisted in crime. In that day shall the Most High rise up and execute the great judgment upon all sinners, and to commit the guardianship of all the righteous and the holy to the holy angels, that they may protect them as the apple of an eye, until every evil and every crime be annihilated. Whether or not the righteous sleep securely, wise men shall then truly perceive. And the sons of the earth shall understand every word of that book, knowing that their riches cannot save them in the ruin of their crimes. Woe to you sinners, when you shall be afflicted on account of the righteous in the day of the great trouble, shall be burnt in fire, and be recompensed according to your deeds. Woe to you, perverted in heart, who are watchful to obtain an accurate knowledge of evil, and to discover terrors. No one shall assist you. Woe to you sinners, who with words of your mouth and with the work of your hands have you acted impiously. In the flame of a blazing fire shall you be burnt. And now know that the angels shall inquire into your conduct in heaven. Of the sun, the moon, and the stars shall they inquire respecting your sins. For upon earth you exercise jurisdiction over the righteous. Every cloud shall bear witness against you, the snow, the dew, and the rain. For all of them shall be withholden from you, and they may not descend upon you, nor become subservient to your crimes. Now then, Bring gifts of salutation to the rain, that, not being withholden, it may descend upon you, and to the dew, if it has received from you gold and silver. But when the frost, snow, cold, and every snowy wind, and every suffering belonging to them fall upon you, in those days you will be utterly incapable of standing before them. So there's a great drought and burning, followed by a great freeze again. Attentively consider heaven, all you progeny of heaven, and all the works of the Most High fear him, nor conduct yourselves criminally before him. If he shut up the windows of heaven, restraining the rain and dew, that it may not descend upon the earth on your account, what will you do? And if he sends his wrath upon you and upon all your deeds, you are not they who can supplicate him, you who utter against his righteousness language proud and powerful? To you there shall be no peace. Do you not see the commanders of ships, how their vessels are tossed about by the waves, torn to pieces by the winds, and exposed to the greatest peril? That they therefore fear because their whole property is embarked with them on the ocean? That they forebode evil in their hearts because it may swallow them up and they may perish in it? Oh, wow. He's saying if you can be good enough while you're out in the ocean to be good. Is it not the whole sea, all its waters, and all its commotion, the work of him, the Most High, of him who has sealed up all its execrations, and girded it up on every side with sand? Is it not at his rebuke dried up and alarmed, while all its fish, with everything contained in it, die? And will not you sinners who are on earth fear him? Is not he the maker of heaven and earth, and of all things which are in them? And who has given erudition and wisdom to all that move and progressive upon the earth and over the sea? Are not the commanders of ships terrified at the ocean? And shall not sinners be terrified at the Most High? And it appears chapter 101 is missing from the text. In those days when he shall cast the calamity of fire upon you, whither will you fly, and where will you be safe? And when he sends forth his word against you, and you not spared and terrified, all the luminaries are agitated with great fear, and all the earth is spared, while it trembles and suffers anxiety. All the angels fulfill the commands received by them, and are desirous of being concealed from the presence of the great glory, while the children of the earth are alarmed and troubled. So it's saying even the angels want to hide during this period of time. But you sinners are forever accursed. To you there shall be no peace. Fear not, souls of the righteous, but wait with patient hope for the day of your death and righteousness. Grieve not, because your souls descend in great trouble, with groaning, lamentation, and sorrow, to the receptacle of the dead. In your lifetimes, your bodies have not received recompense in the proportion to your goodness, but in the period of your existence have sinners existed, in the period of your execration and of punishment. And when you die, sinners say concerning you, as we die, the righteous die. What profit have they in their works? Behold, like us, they expire in sorrow and in darkness. What advantage have they over us? Henceforward, are we equal? What will be within their grasp, and what before their eyes forever? For behold, they are dead, and never will again perceive the light. I say unto you, sinners, you have been satisfied with meat and drink, with human plunder and rapine, or rape, with sin, and with acquisition of wealth, and with the sight of good days. Have you not marked the righteous, for their end is in peace? For no oppression is found in them, even to the day of their death. They perish and are as if they were not, while their souls descend in trouble to the receptacle of the dead. But now I swear to you, righteous, by the greatness of his splendor and his glory, by his illustrious kingdom and by his majesty, to you I swear, that I comprehend this mystery, and that I have read the tablet of heaven, have seen the writing of the holy ones, and have discovered what is written and impressed on it concerning you. I have seen that all goodness, joy, and glory has been prepared for you, and been written down for the spirits of them who die, eminently righteous and good. To you it shall be given in return for all your troubles, and your portion of happiness shall far exceed the portion of the living. The spirits of you who die in righteousness shall exist and rejoice. Their spirits shall exult, and their remembrance shall be before the face of the Mighty One from generation to generation, nor shall they now fear disgrace. Woe to you, sinners, when you die in your sins, and they who are like you say respecting you, blessed are these sinners. They have lived out their whole period, and now they die in happiness and in wealth. Distress and slaughter they knew not while alive. In honor they die, nor ever in their lifetime did judgment overtake them. But has it not been shown to them that when the receptacle of the dead their souls shall be made to descend, their evil deeds shall become their greatest torments? Into darkness, into the snare, and into the flame, which shall burn to the great judgment, shall their spirits enter, and the great judgment shall take effect forever and forever. So it shows that this punishment lasts until the great judgment. And I keep trying to bring people to that point that, yes, there is a judgment that is a type of a period judgment, but it says that that great judgment, they burn up and are gone, and their souls are no more. Woe to you, for to you there shall be no peace, neither can you say to the righteous and to the good who are alive, in those days of trouble have we been afflicted. Every manner of trouble have we seen, and many evil things have suffered. Our spirits have been consumed, lessened, and diminished. We have perished, nor has there been a possibility of help for us in word or in deed. We have found none, but have been tormented and destroyed. We have not expected to live day after day. We have hoped indeed to have been the head. But we have become the tail. We have been afflicted when we have exerted ourselves, but we have been devoured by sinners and the ungodly. Their yoke has been heavy upon us. To those who exercise dominion over us, who detest and who goad us, and to those who hate us, have we humbled our neck, but they have shown no compassion toward us. We have been desirous of escaping from them, that we may fly away and be at rest. But we have found no place to which we could fly and be secure from them. We have sought asylum with princes in our distress, and have cried out to those who were devouring us. But our cry has not been regarded, nor have they been disposed to hear our voices, but rather to assist those who plunder and devour us, those who diminish us and hide their oppression, who remove not their yoke from us, but devour, enervate, and slay us, who conceal our slaughter, nor remember that they have lifted up their hands against us. I swear to you, righteous, that in heaven the angels record your goodness before the glory of the Mighty One. Wait with patient hope. For formerly you have been disgraced with evil and with affliction, but now shall you shine like the luminaries of heaven. You shall be seen, and the gates of heaven shall be opened to you. Your cries have cried for judgment, and it has appeared to you. For an account of all your sufferings shall be required from the princes, and from every one who has assisted your plunderers. Wait with patient hope, nor relinquish your confidence, for great joy shall be yours, like that of angels in heaven. Conduct yourselves as you may, still you shall not be concealed in the day of the great judgment. You shall not be found like sinners, and eternal condemnation shall be far from you, so long as the world exists. And now fear not, righteous, when you see sinners flourishing and prosperous in their ways. Be not associates with them, but keep yourselves at a distance from their oppression. Be you associated with the host of heaven. You sinners say, all our transgressions shall not be taken account of and be recorded, but all your transgressions shall be recorded daily. And be assured by me that light and darkness, day and night, behold all your transgressions. Be not impious in your thoughts, lie not. Surrender not the word of uprightness. Lie not against the word of the Holy and the Mighty One. Glorify not your idols, for all your lying and all your impiety is not for righteousness, but for great crime. Now will I point out a mystery. Many sinners shall turn and transgress against the word of the uprightness. They shall speak evil things, they shall utter falsehood, execute great undertakings, and compose books in their own words. But when they shall write all my words correctly in their own languages, they shall neither change or diminish them, but shall write them all correctly, all which from the first I have uttered concerning them. Another mystery also I poured out to the righteous, and the wise shall be given books of joy, of integrity, and of great wisdom. To them shall be books be given, in which they shall believe, and in which they shall rejoice. And all the righteous shall be rewarded, who from these shall acquire the knowledge of every upright path. In those days, saith the Lord, they shall call the children of the earth, and make them listen to their wisdom. Show them that you are their leaders, and that remunerate shall take place over the whole and that remuneration shall take place over the whole earth. For I and my son will forever hold communion, and with them in the paths of uprightness will they while they are still alive. Peace shall be yours. Rejoice, children of integrity in the truth. After a time, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech. She became pregnant by him and brought forth a child, the flesh of which was as white as snow and red as a rose, the hair of whose head was white like wool and long, and whose eyes were beautiful. When he opened them, he illuminated all the house like the sun. The whole house abounded with light. And when he was taken from the hand of the midwife, Lamech his father became afraid of him, and flying away came to his own father Methuselah, and said, I have begotten a son unlike to other children. He is not human, but resembling the offspring of the angels of heaven, is of a different nature from ours, being altogether unlike us. His eyes are bright as the rays of the sun, his countenance glorious, and he looks not as if he belongs to me, but to the angels. I'm afraid lest something miraculous should take place on the earth in his days. And now, my father, let me entreat and request you to go to our progenitor Enoch, and learn from him the truth, for his residence is with the angels. And when Methuselah heard the words of his son, he came to me, and with the extremities of the earth, for he had been informed that I was there, and he cried out. I want to make it. I want to make a comment here. It says he came to me at the extremities of the earth. Dude, they're flying. They're flying some kind of craft going here and there very fast. I heard his voice and went to him, saying, Behold, I am here, my son, since you have come to me. He answered and said, On account of a great event have I come to you, and on account of a sight difficult to comprehend have I approached you. And now, my father, hear me. For to my son Lamech a child has been born, who resembles not him, and whose nature is not like the nature of man. His color is whiter than snow, he is redder than the rose. The hair of his head is whiter than white wool. His eyes are like the rays of the sun, and when he opened them, he illuminated the whole house. When also he was taken from the hand of the midwife, his father Lamech feared and fled to me, believing not that the child belonged to him, but that he resembled the angels of heaven. And behold, I come to you that you might point out to me the truth. Then I, Enoch, answered and said, The Lord will effect a new thing upon the earth. This have I explained, and seen in a vision. I have shown you that in a generation of Jared my father, those who were from heaven disregarded the word of the Lord. Behold, they committed crimes, laid aside their class, and intermingled with women. With them also they transgressed, married with them, and begot children. A great destruction therefore shall come upon the earth, a deluge, a great destruction shall take place in 1 year. This child which is born to you, your son, shall survive on earth, and his 3 sons shall be saved with him. When all mankind who are on earth shall die, he shall be safe. And I want to make a point real quick here, because we're going to read later in Zoroastrian that they believe that Lamech's wife was impregnated by an angel as well, and that Zoroaster, who is supposedly the Enoch, was born of. All right, well, I believe these are a similar story of 2 different seeds, because we have it here written clearly that I'm sorry, Noah was Lamech's son, and not born of the angels. But we also have it clearly that the Creator made a change in mankind at that time. So clearly Noah had something that was physically changed about him. And I just wanted to throw that up in there, because when these stories come about, because I do believe in more than one flood, I do believe in more than one flood story, and I believe Zoroaster is quite possibly a true story, but I believe it is the antithesis to this story. It's the story that's supposed to make the real one look fake. In them I saw written that the generation after generation shall transgress until a righteous race shall arise, until transgression and crime perish from the earth, until all goodness come upon it. And now, my son, go tell your son Lamech that the child which is born in his child in truth, and that there is no deception. When Methuselah heard the word of his father Enoch, who had shown him every secret thing, he returned with understanding, and called the name of the child Noah, because he was to console the earth on account of all of its destruction. Another book which Enoch wrote for his son Methuselah, and for those who should come after him, and preserve their purity of conduct in the latter days. You who have labored shall wait in those days until the evildoers be consumed, and the power of the guilty be annihilated. Wait until sin pass away, for the name shall be blotted out of the holy books. Their seed shall be destroyed, and their spirit slain. They shall cry out and lament in the invisible waste, and in the bottomless fire shall they burn. There I perceived, as it were, a cloud, which could not be seen through, and from the depth of it I was able to look upwards. I beheld also a flame of fire blazing brightly, and as it were glittering mountains whirled around and agitated from side to side. Then I inquired of one of the holy angels who was with me, and said, What is this splendid object? For it is not heaven, but a flame of fire alone which blazes, and in it there is the clamor of exclamation, of woe, and of great suffering. He said, There, into that place which ye behold, shall be thrust the spirit of sinners and blasphemers, of those who shall do evil, and who shall pervert all which is respecting these things. There shall be writings and impressions above in heaven, that the angels may read them, and know what shall happen both to sinners and to the spirits of the humble, to those who have suffered in their bodies, but have been rewarded by God, who have been injuriously treated by wicked men, who have been loved by God, who have been attached neither to gold nor silver, nor any good thing in the world, but have given their bodies to torment. Folks, if you're one of the people in torment now, I believe it's speaking to us. To those who from the period of their birth have not been covetous of earthly riches, but have regarded themselves as a breath passing away. Such has been their conduct, and as much as has the Lord tried them, and their spirits have been found pure, that they might bless his name, and their blessings have I related in a book, and he has rewarded them, for they have been found to love heaven with an everlasting aspiration. God has said, while they have been trodden down by wicked men, they have heard from them revilings and blasphemies, and have been ignominiously treated, while they were blessing me. And now will I call the spirits of the good from the generations of light, and will change those who have been born in darkness, who have not in their bodies been recompensed with glory, as their faith may have merited. I will bring them into the splendid light of those who love my holy name, and I will place each of them on a throne of glory peculiarly his own, and they shall be at rest during unnumbered periods. Righteous is the judgment of God. For those to the faithful shall he give faith in the habitations of uprightness. They shall see those who have been born in darkness, unto darkness shall be cast, while the righteous shall be at rest. Sinners shall cry out, beholding them, while they exist in splendor and proceed forward to the days and periods prescribed to them. And that, folks, is Enoch. Oh, thank you, three, which are still with me. Take a minute to wind up here. There's one or two statements I wanted to address. All the time I hear people say, "Hi, Ram. How you doing, buddy? Good to have you here. Shalom. Shabbat shalom to you." All the time I hear people talking about how can the Creator, if He really loves, destroy that which He created. And I believe I've tried to show through these different readings that He did not create the rebellion. It was by choice that the creation rebelled. That each time it rebels, it falls into a state that's more material and less spiritual, more under a curse as opposed to blessed. Um, because of free will, the whole yin and yang, the whole reaping and sowing exists because there has to be the possibility of good and bad choices. All the time, people say, "Oh, all the sinners are going to die." As Christians, try to label everybody as sinners. Um, but if you read the scriptures, and I'm not talking about just in the Bible, though it is in there, it indicates that we've placed judgment and made the word sinners what it is. Because according to the definition we just read here in Enoch, sinners are those who purposely oppress those that are righteous. They are those who purposely work and commit crime to gain riches. They are those who purposely, because they purposely choose that which oppresses others, they have a period of time which they are allowed to flourish. And many of them die evil and wicked in their wealth. And it says, okay, they've gotten everything they've deserved. They've earned all of it. So from here on out, theirs is a different judgment. So when we see somebody who strays from the path or does something we don't particularly see as enlightened or whatever, we need to not come from the position of judgment, which is what we've been programmed to do, but from the position of light and realizing that, okay, that person is part of a system. That person is falling because of the system and the oppression that he is under. That person is one of the sheep and not one of the shepherds. It keeps going back to the fact that there's a different judgment between sheep and shepherds. We can choose to follow darkness and do in darkness, but it's those who specifically create that darkness are the ones that are specifically labeled as sinners here. And that's the reason, one of the main points I wanted to make at the end of this. He did not and does not intend to destroy what he created. He intends to correct, to redirect all that bad into a good, positive picture. And in that process, it says that sin ends. It can be no more. There's too much light for it to exist within. There's many theories as to how and why that can happen. I all the time I tell people, let's get out of our boxes and condemning and judging each other by what box we're in. I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm Hindu, I'm whatever. Those are boxes. There are good people on the path of light stuck in every box. Our object is to get free from the box and to have everybody who's on that path of light realize that we're headed toward the same Creator. Because it says during that time of that final judgment, when all this correcting goes on, His Spirit is poured out on all men. It doesn't say His Spirit's poured out on Christians. It doesn't say His Spirit's poured out on Muslims. It doesn't say His Spirit's poured out on Hindus. It doesn't say His Spirit's poured out on Buddhists. It says His Spirit is poured out on all men. We are all given the choice again to look and see, are we walking in light or are we walking in darkness? He wants it all to be in light. He became saddened by what he created. That's exactly how it reads. I follow the way. I try not to interfere in the way. And see, Rand, that's one of the first terms I used when I stepped outside of the Christian church. Because it says that the Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. So all three of those are exemplified in the one path, the way. It's a direction. It is an illumination. It is truth, justice. And I like that term a lot. And a lot of times I follow the way. Because the more books I read outside of the ones I was given as a child, the path of the way goes through it. In the Vedas, you can find the way. In the tablets of Inca, you can find the way. In the book of Enoch, you can find the way. In what they call the Bible, you can find the way. The way is how our heart treats others. And truth and life can come out of that, or death and destruction. So, choose the way of light. I do appreciate everybody joining me in this week. I think I'm doing all right. It's 2 o'clock. I may head out sometime this afternoon and see if there might be a little area of water to walk and look at or something. Today I'm smoking forbidden fruit, Rand. It has come through our community to one of our local growers, and I got an opportunity to try it out here. It is the craziest, terpiest weed I've ever had. It is like dry Fruit Loops, and it comes through strong flavored. It's a very mellow high. From what I understand, it peaks at about 20%, 22% if you do a good grow of it. This is nowhere near that. But it's not a real quick pain reliever, but it is a relaxer. Lemon sherbet. I am looking forward to getting some more lemons and pines going. Those are definitely elevating for the mood and help you when you're facing times that you're not feeling motivated or weak. I also have a little bit of abusive OG left, but I've been saving it for when I wake up during the night. I totally agree. You can't live or walk in the way through judgment of others. All the scriptures tell us that there is one judge. All the scriptures continually tell us that judgment is a self-centered position saying that I have authority or knowledge more than the person that I'm viewing. There is a system that was put into place which, when ruled by righteous rulers or judges, works for the judging between conflicts of people. That's different. That's a different type of judgment. That is the actual discernment of evil, right and wrong, and that type of thing. But when we look at somebody else and we think we know why they're doing something, what they're doing, or what's going to even come of what they're doing sometimes, and then we proceed to make our actions and the way we treat them in light of that, then we've crossed over and we've gone to a position of we stepped out of the authority position we're supposed to have. We're exhibiting man is not meant to oppress other men. We're meant to work together as cogs in a machine. We're meant to combine and mesh. And too often I've got a picture here in my head, and the words I would use to describe it would totally make it confusing because it's too many different theological ideas together. I'm going to read real quick. I judge myself against others, but I never judge others against me. That is a good point. Um, However, I don't fully agree with the first part. I do agree that we can measure ourselves um, in progression, but it says we have one judge, one ultimate judge, one righteous judge. So when I really shouldn't be judging myself against others, I should be judging myself against the path that he laid out, against the rules that he laid out. Um, it's when I begin to judge my behavior versus what somebody else does that I am able to then begin to justify doing wrong myself at times because I'm not that bad. We qualify and quantify as opposed to looking at something and saying, uh, how do I got a stuck that is so. I got a thought so stuck right now it hurts. I don't know how to explain it. No man is an island is absolutely true, man. I've just seen a lot of judgment going on lately on all kinds of little stupid stuff all over our communities, and I'm not just talking, the cannabis community or the truther community or the survivalist community or the hunting community or it's a worldwide sickness that's going on. And as it seems that more things are being disclosed in the physical world as to the level of the lie that we've lived under for all these ages, as the truth of man's actual state, which we've been lied to for all these ages, as all these things are being revealed and brought to light, the hate and the anger and those that are being judged by it, who know they're being judged by the coming cataclysm, is rising. And as it rises, and it says the evil of that day increases, so also the grace must increase. So we're going to begin to see more people speak miracles into other people's lives. We're going to be able to see people lay hands on others in healings. As these evils are more revealed and as they begin to show up, as the craft or houses or whatever you want to call them, ships, begin to materialize in this plane, and we begin to see these actual beings who claim themselves our rulers physically manifested in this realm again, that spiritual side that we just read about, that protection comes in, that pouring out of the spirit, that they can have supernatural sustenance. All these things increase. Brain fart, Brian. Yeah, that is one of the side effects of the medication that you can control by the amount you take. But in this case, that's not what happened. In this case, I'm a person who visualizes things and I see pictures, and a lot of times I know the words I would use to describe that picture are going to trigger people because so much of our language has been turned good, evil, evil, good. We can say, go fuck yourself and it's okay. And yet say, God bless you. And you said, God. We say bless you, but we throw that good in there or good bless you or something, something opposed to the evil or the darkness be on you. And we're suddenly, criticized for it. And that's the turning over. And the judgment is just one of their tricks, one of the things they use, fear and judgment. They put you in a state of fear of others, and thereby get you to judge their actions, begin to have you assume the position of the creator and assuming that we know better what's good for them as opposed to their creator, who is also our creator. The creator is the water around all these islands. Rand, it just came to me. That's a pretty good analogy, actually. It's what keeps us from annihilating each other in a way. I'll finish up this smoke here. I do appreciate everybody. Nita, thank you for coming in. Rand for hanging out. You guys got anything good to add to the end of this before I shut it down? Everybody who came this week, if you're in illness, I hope you find comfort and relief and healing. If you're in financial distress, I hope you find some prosperity. I'm not talking money, I'm talking some prosperity. The good flow path of love, for love to find you in your money as well. It's not money that's evil, it is the love of money. And a lot of times, once again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, a system of exchange between people has always existed. It's the fact that they've taken that money and turned it into a false, well, a defraud, a fake base. They're defrauding, they're taking everything for nothing. It's the reason why they're being judged, and the judgments are coming. False weights and measures. It's calling a 1.5 by 2.5, or 3.5, a 1.5 by 3.5, a 2 by 4. It's calling uh, 27 grams an ounce. It's all kinds of false stuff they do to us, trying to take. It's all they do is take. They created entitlement, Nita. They created entitlement by taking from righteous people. When a righteous person has enough to sustain himself and others, you have a building of society. But when you take so much that a righteous person cannot build, that person then loses hope that his work has weight or measure or positive forward motion. It's them building their houses on our labor. Um, when you take that away from a man, he feels like he's owed something, and I say that as mankind, man and woman. He feels he's owed something for that time that was taken from him, and he is. And that's the unrighteousness. That's the imbalance, and that is why there's a coming financial catastrophe that occurs, because it says that during this period of time, the creditor is going to be in the same position that he has placed those that he's credited or plundered. And we're all going to be on an even financial playing board at that point in time. And there will be means of exchange during that time. And there'll be people who have love of that exchange, a love of money during that, an exchange of that. Because money is just that system of exchange. And that's the hope, that that defrauded system will be done away with, so that once again we can have an honest system of wage and labor, so that entitlements go away, because we're able to build positive futures for our children. They have no hope or future right now because they come into the world hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. They are owed. The entitlement they created, it's a fake entitlement. Yes, because they created the debt that put the people there. They created the slavery. And that's why they're judged. It's only those who see the system in place and decide to use it, who decide to create their own little realm. that join in with this. I do too, Rand. You take care. I finished my smoke. Thank you all. Appreciate everybody who joined me today.